Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Eddie Mauro, candidate for the United States Senate, coming to you today from the More for Tomorrow studios, talking about More for Tomorrow virtual Q&A that we're having. We're going to have some guests on today. If you saw the commercials that we're promoting throughout the day, you'd see all the great guests we have, including an Emmy Award winner that will be joining us later on today. We have some folks from our campaign team, folks from the community, that'll be with us to talk about what's going on, what they're seeing about us, and then we want to hear from constituents, as we've been doing for the past week or more, and taking questions over the phone. Our technology continues to improve with this great team that we have here. My hat's off to all of them. So let's go have at it. And it's going to start off today by welcoming to us through a phone Rob Johnson. Rob is a very inspirational leader in the faith community, working out of Corinthian Baptist Church, but very well connected to various congregations across the state of Iowa. He's part of our faith team, has been very instrumental in me reaching out to the community and us talking about faith and how faith and politics shapes who we are, which is very important to me. So I want to welcome Rob. Rob, thanks for joining us today. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I think we got you, Rob. Our first technological hurdles covered so far today. Want to if you don't mind, Rob, if you give us a quick second and maybe lead us all in a quick prayer, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Let us pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus, first God, we tell you thank you for today. With everything that's going on in the world, oh God, we're coming to you to seek for guidance, for wisdom, for understanding. But not only that, oh God, I'm praying for leaders who are stepping out to continue to try and lead and connect with your people, like our good brother here, Brother Eddie Mauro. God, we're praying for his leadership, for his campaign, for his connectivity with people, that we don't just hear their concerns, but we pray that we have opportunities to implement these concerns, whether it come in June and November. So right now, oh God, we're praying for all of the leaders who are out here really striving to help your people during very tumultuous time. And we're praying for the people. We're praying for people who have lost their jobs, people who are worried and concerned, people who are afraid and scared in this day and time. God, we pray for ease and for power, that you'll grant them peace, you'll grant them serenity during this time. And for those who have lost loved ones, oh God, we're praying that you will cover their grief and continue to show them that you are God. It is in your Son, Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much, Rob, for that. Really appreciate it. Hey, if you got a second, we'd just like to ask you a couple questions that we could talk about. You've been in contact with lots of folks in the community, faith leaders.
Yes.
What are you hearing? How a church has been responding to this outbreak so far?
Well, you know, it has definitely changed our life, and we have to get more creative now, right? Churches, you're seeing more churches going to online services. You're seeing conference calls. You're seeing Zoom meetings, Skype meetings, because the church still must operate just like any other business operates. The church still must operate. The bills still have to be paid. And so you have certain churches who have smaller congregations who really rely on their membership and on the presence of their members to continue to be operational. And so you have those churches really struggling right now, especially those without the opportunity to do anything electronic for electronic giving or anything like that. We saw today that a lot of churches made some announcements that they're not having service. Some going on the second week, some going on the third week, some going on the fourth week, where they're unable to have church services due to the health guidelines laid out by our health department and the CDC. And so churches are definitely hurting, but most importantly, pastors and faith leaders are understanding that their people are hurting because they have people in their churches who may have been laid off due to this virus, or who may have had their salaries cut due to this virus, or their hours cut due to this virus. And so they're having to approach that situation in a very delicate way, but at the same time, still trying to maintain and keep the church doors open.
Um, what have, and right now, especially in the Christian community, we're in the midst of Lent.
Yes.
And we're usually praying during Lent. We're doing almsgiving. We're doing all kinds of other works. And obviously, we're not able to do that as much. What do you sense from a charity perspective that you're seeing in churches or hearing from churches? And what's the biggest needs that you're hearing, if anything, from the congregation so far?
So one big thing that I was just on a conference call with Bishop William Murphy and Pastor John Gray from South Carolina, and one thing we were discussing, because we were talking about down in Georgia, South Carolina, California, Des Moines, Chicago, first responders, doctors, and nurses are still on the front lines of this. And some of those people are members of our churches. And so they also have children. And so what we've been trying to do from a charity perspective is have certain churches who have the capacity to open, to ask them to watch these first responders or these doctors and nurses' children while other places are closing. We're asking for these licensed individuals who were maybe a lady who was at a child care facility that is now closed until further notice. If she would come into the church, and we'll open the church doors, keep everything sanitary, hire some additional cleaning, and then the church becomes that safe haven that it has always been for opportunities like this for our first responders and for our doctors and nurses who are on the front line trying to fight this horrendous virus.
A lot of challenges out there, aren't there?
A ton of challenges, but that's why we're grateful for good leadership, right? Because moments like these, people like you should definitely be in office, because all of this comes down to who's sitting in the seat. And we have to have people who understand these challenges, who understand people, who just understand the civility of what is happening in this very moment, and how people in churches and congregations, no matter what religion, faith orientation, no matter what race you are, that people are suffering. One thing that I really loved that Joe Biden said was that this disease doesn't discriminate based upon who you are, how much money you have. Anybody can get it, and we see this. We just saw that our vice president's staffer now has this disease, and so then you have to beg the question: who's looking out for the poor? Who's looking out for our homeless, who are exposed, who can't wash their hands like we're encouraging everybody else to? So how are we looking out for these? And that's, I believe, where the churches are stepping up, and leaders like you who are stepping up, going to creative visions, feeding people like you've been doing, and going there and giving of your time and of your energy to make sure that people are okay, not because you're just running for Senate, but because you've been doing it for a very long time.
I appreciate that, and we need to continue to do that work. In fact, I think I'm planning on doing some work with Creative Visions tomorrow at noon, trying to meet the needs of the people. We're going to talk more today about other ways we can be giving to Des Moines Area Religious Council and Iowa Food Bank and others as well, so that we can continue to meet the needs that are out there. I got to ask you one more question. I'm going to let you go. What do you say to people of faith that are in fear right now, who aren't seeing moral or faith leadership necessarily today? What can we say to them in a few minutes' time here?
Here's what I would say. We choose faith over fear. God has always told us to operate in wisdom and be smart. As a matter of fact, Jesus even tells us, do not tempt the Lord thy God. So we're encouraging people to listen and heed to the advice of what the CDC and what our health organizations are saying. But remember, even while doing that, you're operating in wisdom and you're still operating in faith. Mm-hmm. Don't lose your hope and don't lose your faith, because we will rise again. This is just a moment in time. A year from now, we'll look back on this and we can say, we made it over.
And we appreciate that, Ron. I got to tell you, I was a little scared when I asked that question. I thought maybe you might yell at me. That happened yesterday when the news reporter asked the president such a question. Didn't seem to want to take that easy question to tell us how we need to lead today. So thanks for your words of encouragement. Thanks for your continued help on this campaign. We'll continue to try to reach out ourselves digitally to our faith leaders and keep them engaged. and look forward to working with you again here really soon. So you have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful day, Robbie. Thanks for jumping on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Eddie Mauro for tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, brother. Rob Johnson, our faith leader, as my battery starts to run low. It becomes a problem for us. But we continue to move along with our conversations today. And we got to talk about faith in politics. It's one of the things that really drew me to Pete Buttigieg early on, was his ability to talk about how his faith values had kind of shaped Democrat values. And they're very similar. And we've been losing some elections, in my opinion, especially in the state of Iowa, because we've kind of forfeited the faith conversation. And I'm here to tell folks throughout this state that I'm the candidate who wants to go out and re-energize our faith communities. Our Catholic and Lutheran brothers and sisters, our evangelicals out in northwest and northeast Iowa, southwest and southeast Iowa, and our urban, suburban, and rural settings. Before we got the lockdown where we pulled our teams off the streets, every Sunday we were in various congregations around the state. Obviously we can't do that physically right now, so we're trying to figure out how do we continue to communicate and connect with faith leaders and faith communities digitally. We'll continue to make sure that happens for us. So a great start for us. Thanks, Rob, for jumping on with us. Yep, what do we got? We're trying to fix a little technological glitch here in a minute. My battery was running down on my phone, so we got our phone back up. We're back off and running. Got a great job by Brian Weber, the leader of our technological team over there. He had to disinfect my phone after I handed it to him. So thanks for doing that for me, Brian. Well, Brian and I have both become better versions of ourselves over the last few days, because I don't always tie my shoes, and he was yelling at me because of that, so I made sure I tied my shoes today before leaving. And I thought about you when I did that. And Brian said he's trying to become a better version of himself too, so he's doing some things we've been talking about as well over the last few days. So I can't talk about what those are right now, because his wife will be mad at me. Anyway, we're interested as well, Brian, if there's any questions that pop up. We'll take a couple questions before we move on to our next event. But I wanted to go back really quick to talk about Rob Johnson and talk about how important our faith values are, because it's something that's been instilled in me as a young person. I've talked about it a lot when I'm out on the street, and when I get out in front of congregations, I talk often about how I'm in front of people because I am filled with hope. I am energized when I walk into faith communities. I do see the value of our faith lives and how those values are impactful in our communities. But then I also look at people and tell them that I come before them as a humble servant, that I'm imperfect, that we're all imperfect, but we're fighting each and every day to be a better version of ourselves. And that's happened to me because of some great faith leaders and my parents and grandparents. I talk about my aunt, Sister Joanne Mauro, a lot, who was a nun for 50 years. She taught me about love. She taught me about acceptance. She taught me about understanding and tolerance. She taught me about how we feed the hungry and clothe the naked, visit the imprisoned, take care of the homeless. There's so much that we need to be doing, not only as faith leaders, but as Americans. And I've taken those lessons and I've been giving back to the community for a number of years. Started as a teenager, actually, at the Catholic Worker over on 7th in Indiana. If you ever want to go look at a good project, contact Frank Cadero over there in the team that's serving the homeless and helping folks dealing with mental difficulties and addiction difficulties. They do great work. Started there as a teenager. As I got older, I expanded that activism. Became part of my daily life, my daily being. I've told the story a lot about the kids I used to teach. In the mornings, on Tuesdays and Fridays, we would get out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. We would show up in the community, and we would feed the homeless. Did that with the Salvation Army and their early morning canteen. Judy Anderson, a good friend of mine, we got together back at that time. Dr. Dean Wright, who was a sociologist at Dayton University, I think has since passed away, taught me an awful lot about the homeless community and who folks were. And we taught that to our students about who those struggling people are. Because right now we kind of chastise people that are struggling. We call them lazy. We say they're not working. They're not pulling their weight. And when you get out of the street and meet people, you get a sense of who they are and why there's a need and why we need to be helping them out. There's a lot of deserving folks out there that can use our hand, and we need to continue to reach out and offer our hand and our help all the time. And that'll happen. That's been going on since the time of Christ, and that'll be going on to the end of time, where we're going to have folks that we need to help out. And right now in this crisis is a time we need to be doing that as well. And I'm very worried, both from my brethren on the Democrat side and Republicans, that we're not setting aside or setting a strategy that are going to help out the most vulnerable peoples in our communities. So we want to make sure we continue to talk about that and advocate for that, and make sure that we're doing the right things there for everybody in our communities, and especially folks of color, especially poor folks who are being left behind. We need to talk about what we're doing with those that are immigrants here that might not have the status that we all want them to have. We need to make sure we take care of every person in this country during this very, very tumultuous time of need. And I'm not seeing Mr. Trump, I'm not seeing Mitch McConnell, I'm not seeing the Republicans right now fully grasping the opportunity for that need. We're in the middle of a pandemic, which is also the chance for us to step up morally, and with the values that we're going to need to help out Americans and all the folks here in this country in a meaningful way. Holy cow, we got a call from Ashley in Tumble. Hi, Ashley. She asked a question for us that Governor Reynolds announced 23 new cases of COVID-19. Are we seeing this curve about to explode? I got to be honest, if you're listening and following what's going on out there, we're all very worried, and we should all be very worried. And why it looks across the state, I've been seeing even on my own personal Facebook page, some of my friends don't see what the big concern is yet. This thing's going to multiply by 3s and maybe 5s. If you look what's going on in New York today, they're multiplying by 2s and 3s on a daily basis. So if one person has it, then that means there's going to be 3 or 4 or 5 more that also have it. They just don't know it yet. So we are on the brink of this really starting to pick up and explode in the way that we all thought it would. And that's why we're calling on our leaders to take prudent steps now. Even Dr. Fauci keeps asking us to do that. That's why New York is taking steps, in Connecticut and Illinois and California. So we'll continue to call on Governor Reynolds to continue to move the ball forward. Let's not let the ball get behind us. We want to stay out in front of this as best we can. So I think we made some inroads by calling the National Guard a little bit out. We need to get them out there fully activated to make sure they're part of this solution that's about to hit us. And it's hard for us all to grasp that. And I'm one of those guys every once in a while too, because how many times have we been told that we're going to get 12 inches of snow tomorrow, and we all stay home, we're calling off school, and we wake up the next day, and there's no snow. And it's nice and sunny out all day, and our kids are home running around, and we're all stayed home from work, and it's an inconvenience. And I hear you. It's an inconvenience. But here's an opportunity now for us to see that here's a big ass snowstorm coming. It's on its way. There's nothing we can do about it other than to shelter ourselves. And the more we shelter ourselves, the less snow that we might get. And whether this is going to be a 12-foot blizzard or a 24-foot blizzard or a 36-foot blizzard, it's going to depend on the type of actions that we take personally, but also what our government does and what our government's going to do to help us prepare as the snowstorm does start to hit us. And I'm very concerned about that kind of leadership at the state and federal level. I want to continue to challenge all of our elected leaders, all of our leaders to do a better job with what we have happening. Those of us in Central Iowa are still looking for Abdullah Abdi Sharif. K.O. Abdul Samad has asked us to continue to talk about Abdullah Abdi, somebody that the faith community has been out looking for as well. If you have any information about Abdi, please call your local law enforcement. If you're not familiar, a teenager, I believe 18 years of age, was working at Target, mysteriously disappeared from Target after a shift of work. His parents, if you can only imagine, if your son or daughter came up missing, are very, very worried. Many people in the community are also very, very worried. So I want to continue to talk about that. There's all kinds of things moving in the world today. There's all kinds of people dealing with individual tragedies in the midst of this communal tragedy that we're all embraced in. We need to continue to work and operate on multiple fronts. And I know folks are considerate about Avi on this. I do want to thank Carrol Times-Herald for his leadership on the search efforts there. I know folks continue to try to do that even in a socially responsible or physically distanced way right now. But again, anybody out there that would have any inclination, or if you see anything or hear anything, please contact law enforcement. Very, very important for us. You know, I gotta ask a question really quick. I want people to think about this because you've seen a lot over the last few days that, first of all, there were conversations and information being presented to the White House as far back as January about this pandemic, about this snowstorm coming, about this tidal wave that's on its way, and we didn't take the leadership that we should have done. What else is kind of concerning for us today is there are some Senate leaders, evidently, and a couple of Republicans, and even maybe one of our Democrat leaders that may have heard this information and decided to sell stocks. And I'm very concerned about that. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. And we'll have some conversations. Just want to throw that out to you for right now. What do you got, Brian?
Well, I've got a update here, and I was going to hope you could toss me the headphones. We're going to do a little live test. Thank you.
We're always testing here. We're all working on the fly. So the technology continues to improve. We moved up from Mauro for Tomorrow Studios 1.0. We're now at 2.0. Maybe before the end of the 3 hours today, we'll be at 3.0. Our goal is to get the Mauro for Tomorrow Studios to 10.0, where we don't have all these technical difficulties. But thanks for hanging in there with us for a minute today. We do have a variety of live events coming up soon, including our World Water Day starting online tomorrow at 2 p.m. We want to continue to discuss clean water initiatives. Our water continues to be polluted even in the midst of this crisis that we have. We want to make sure we're talking about strategies for how we're going to tackle that. So we got a great team coming on to talk about climate tomorrow. We got a group that's want to talk about regenerative agriculture. I think we have a guest coming on even today to have a conversation about that. Extremely, extremely important. I want to remind folks that if you've looked at our eddiemorrow.com, you'll see on there part of my biography is some young folks I work with in Tanzania where we install water systems. And I've been in contact with them through Slack and WhatsApp on a regular basis. I'm very worried about them. I'm very worried about the coronavirus in those communities because they don't have the health care that we have here in this country. Is far behind as ours is right now. We'll catch up. We got great professionals out there and great doctors. There's some great doctors in Tanzania as well where I go. They just don't have the tools and resources, and they're going to be really operating at a disadvantage. But want to continue to think about our people in our neighborhoods, people in our families, people in our cities, in our counties, our states, in the United States, but also keep our hearts and minds open to those that can be struggling across this world. Very important for us. What else do we got? We're going to be bringing our news director on live here in just a moment. Any second now, is he coming on? Brent Roski, an Emmy Award winner. He's going to join us. We're going to have a quick conversation with Brent. Brent, are you there?
Hey, folks, how are you? It is a pleasure to be with you here today. You are coming from my basement studio here in West Des Moines. My wife and child and I live over here in West Des Moines, and we are very happy to be a part of the Mauro team. It's been a little while since I've been in front of a camera here in Iowa. I hosted a show here called Roski on Politics, but since then have been happily working in politics. So again, couldn't be happier to be on the Eddie Mauro team and helping out today, of course. Wanted to pitch some of the guests that we got coming up today on the live stream. Now, we think that this is the longest live stream a candidate has ever done in Iowa to date. So congratulations to Eddie already for undertaking this 3-hour massive undertaking. Well, let's go through some of these guests we got coming up. Kendra Breitsprecher is with the Dayton paper. She's going to be chatting with Eddie in just a couple minutes here. Doug Burns with the Carrol Herald is going to be interviewing Eddie as well. Both of those folks, well-respected journalists here in the state. Seth Watkins, an organic farmer from down there in Clarinda, Iowa, is going to chat with us a little later. John Niederbach is working for the American Census. He's going to tell us about the census and what does it mean with the no citizenship checkbox, etc. It's going to have a great chat with John Niederbach. And then finally, couldn't be happier to have Iowa State Rep Ross Wilburn joining us. Ross was elected with one of the largest wins in Iowa election history when he ran for his state rep seat up there up in the Ames area. So we're going to have Mr. Wilburn joining us a little later. Again, we're doing this from 2 to 5 today. So log in, share this link with your friends. Actually, our field team right now is doing phone calls, doing some outreach for the campaign, and they're going to be having folks dial in and talk to Mr. Mauro, our candidate here live. But Eddie, I think you're doing a fantastic job so far. This is, with coronavirus, folks, we have changed everything. We've all seen Eddie in a room, handshakes one-on-one, but this sort of thing is brand new. And Eddie, I think you're doing a great job. Are you having fun today?
Thanks, brother. We're having a great time out here today. We're making the best of the situations in front of us. That's what leaders do. That's what people do. They try to figure out how do we work with the cards that have been dealt to us. And we're trying our best to adjust as a campaign. But we also need to talk about Brent, and as we're talking with some of the folks that are coming on the interviews that are coming up and guests that are joining us, how do we also help those who are out there in our communities that are struggling deal with the cards that they've been dealt. And that's going to be an important conversation we have, not only during the few hours today, but also in the days and weeks and months ahead, because this is going to be a long-lasting situation. And Brent, thanks for mentioning what we got. Our team is on the phone working today. If some of you folks remember Jerry Lewis and the telethon, we're kind of talking about doing a telethon style today, where folks will be out there calling voters in the community to introducing me. Looking forward to talking to voters today as much as possible. Continue to make this outreach. I got a great ground group that's out there working from the comfort of their homes and living rooms, and working on the airwaves today from their smartphones and their Google Hangouts and other ways that we can connect with folks.
So coming up just in a second here, I know Kendra from the Dayton paper, I believe she's going to be calling in a sec. They might have her on hold already. I just wanted to kind of give a heads up right now. And this news came out a little earlier today, but CNN is reporting, and this to me just shows the scope of where we're at right now. About 75 million Americans, residents of Connecticut, Illinois, New York, California, have been directed to sequester with only essential workers allowed away from home. So that's about 1 in 5 Americans are being told to stay home. I know Illinois, just our friends there, one state over, are being told to sit tight in their houses. And, just to give folks a heads up who are watching, we're doing this in real time, so we're taking your suggestions on how to make these live streams even more interesting and more valuable. So one thing we're going to be doing is this week we're going to be doing just even some more lifestyle stuff. We're going to have Eddie talk about a little bit of his family life, even some recipes, cooking at home. And, a lot of folks that I've seen interacting on the internet have been talking about how are they handling being in the family situation in their house for 24 hours a day. So handling the kiddos and cooking and all that sort of thing. So it's not just campaigning. It's not just news. It's not just the virus. We want to make sure that people have a sense of community. I've got the fireplace going here. I want people to feel as comfy as they can. I know a good friend of mine out in Nashville, we're actually having a digital get-together tonight just so people don't feel cooped up. So anyway, folks, we want this to be a community. It's not just politics, but of course our candidate here, Eddie Mauro, is running for Senate, and I couldn't be happier to be on this team. And with that, I think we'll maybe shift it over to you, Eddie, and our friend Kendra, who's going to chat with you for the Dayton paper.
Absolutely. So thanks a lot, Brett, for joining us. Emmy Award winner Brett Roski on the Mauro team. Thanks for your comments. And we want to bring Kendra on, Kendra Dodson Breitsprecher. I'm pretty sure I butchered that name, so Kendra, you're going to help me with that. From the Dayton Leader is going to be joining us as we talk about what's going on in rural communities.
Okay.
Hi, Kendra. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You know, all things considered, I'm doing okay. I'm kind of locked in a room, but reaching out to people and trying to help communicate with voters across the state about what's going on with this virus and other issues and concerns that people are having. Tell us really quick about what you do, Kendra.
Well, my family and I own the newspaper here in Dayton, Iowa.
How long have you done that?
We started from scratch 7.5 years ago.
Awesome. And tell me really quick a little bit about Dayton. I know you're just south of Fort Dodge. It's a smallish population, but tell me a little bit about Dayton.
About 800 people. We have a world-famous rodeo every Labor Day weekend. We were very excited. We were getting a new industry and 3 new businesses in town. Now we're kind of worried what that's going to mean. And we're part of the Southeast Valley School District.
Pretty cool. And can you tell me, from your perspective, and you probably got your ear to the ground and working for the newspaper there, how's your community been working together during the coronavirus crisis we have?
Well, the first thing I would say is I don't think it's really hit Dayton yet. We're all worried and we're all thinking, but nobody knows anyone that has it, and that's comforting. Maybe that's a false sense of comfort. But just things like opening the stores an hour early so that the elderly and the immune deficiency can shop, that kind of thing.
Right.
We've been doing that kind of thing.
From a Main Street perspective so far, hasn't been impacted. I'm sure there's a restaurant in town that's been closed, maybe a American Legion or a bar in town, anything like that that's had to close because of church.
Yeah, churches are closed. I hope we'll get some form of online worship by tomorrow. I know they're working on it. Yeah, the restaurant, the bar is closed, and the little restaurant inside of the grocery store is closed. But the inconveniences are so minor. Like when you go to Casey's and get pizza, you know how you open the door and you get pizza?
Yep.
Well, now you can't do that. You have to tell someone, and they open it from the other side with gloves on and hand you pizza. Well, that's a pretty minor thing. I would say that my business has been affected a lot financially because we've lost so much advertising. But at the same time, I'm getting a lot more subscriptions. So I think people are kind of listening, help out small businesses. It's going to be hard on them. So that's been very heartwarming.
How often do you guys put out your paper?
We're weekly.
Okay. And you got probably have a digital outreach too, yeah?
We do. We have a website. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Kendra, I know there's a community health center there in Dayton. Does that facility, in your opinion, does it have the capacity to serve the community during, like you said, it still hasn't really hit Dayton yet. Hopefully.
I actually interviewed them yesterday.
Yeah.
Did a little interview yesterday, and they're still open. And of course, they do ask that you call ahead, just so they know what's happening. Now, I know that the parent organization, the Community Health Center out of Fort Dodge, they've extended their hours. But one interesting thing is our doctor's a brand new mom. And so she's having trouble with childcare because Friday her daycare provider shut down.
Right. Well, and the bad thing about some of our healthcare professionals, Kendra, is they're on the front lines of being exposed, going home and potentially exposing their children and other loved ones. So I'm not sure how is she doing? Do you know for personal protection gear? Do you know?
I didn't answer that specifically. I asked her, the question I asked was, do you feel safe? And she said she did.
Okay.
And honestly, the thing she seemed most concerned about was the daycare, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Most of the people who did daycare here in town went through our school daycare. And that closed Friday, although they're trying to work, with families to make sure they find someplace.
Yeah,
It's different.
Yeah, no, I know it is. It's and we're hoping this is temporary, but we're all gonna have to make some changes in our routine. I mentioned this yesterday on our program that I'm a pretty routine-oriented person too, and my routine is turned upside down. I'm sure everybody's is. We all gotta step up, and even places like Dayton where doesn't feel like there's much of an impact. We're all saying, what's all the fuss? Even a community like that and all the other communities like that across this state need to take this seriously, because all of us have a role to play, and all of our communities have vulnerable peoples there. So.
And Dayton's an older community. We have a big care center in town, so of course that's always a concern.
Right.
You look at the one in Washington, kind of ground zero, and that could very easily happen here. I know they made some rules right away, what they would and wouldn't allow. And I have a couple little part-time jobs, and I do marketing for some places, and one is a nonprofit that works with seniors. And we shut down most of our activities.
So
we don't have fitness classes. We don't have our driver transportation program. We just shut them down, and we feel really bad, but it's for the best, especially when you think of a vulnerable population.
no, it's the right thing right now. What are you hearing from parents so far, Kendra? How are they handling? So we just finished. I'm assuming that the school district there just finished spring break as well. Is that true?
They don't really do. The high school doesn't really do a spring break
Okay.
so much.
So they had
And honestly, I think they just tack days on at Easter, so not really.
okay. So
They
they just
would have had Friday off.
yeah. But they've been forced into a spring break, a perpetual one potentially.
Right.
So how are parents handling kids not going to school so far? What are you hearing?
I'm here to driving them crazy, and this homeschool stuff's a lot harder than they thought. So one thing that I did, because I was a teacher for 25 years, I taught high school, college, I taught it. I started a little homeschool lit class online.
Okay.
No charge, nothing. Just if your kids are driving you crazy, here you go. Here's a Facebook lit class you can take for free. And I've had 56 or 57 sign up for it. It's been kind of cool, actually, because sometimes parents have signed up with their kids, so they're going to take it together. So I thought that was kind of neat.
That is cool. So Kendra, how do they get there? How do they get to that site? What's the site?
Kendra is homeschool lit class. Is the name of it. Is that not clever? I am so clever. And it's on Facebook. And the lessons, I just put the lesson up now, but officially class starts Monday.
So-
And we're reading the hate you give.
The Hate You Give?
Yeah. Have you
Yeah.
heard that one?
I have. So tell us the site again. We want to get it on our Facebook page and out to folks. What is it? If you're okay with that.
Well, it's just a Facebook page.
Yep.
And it's Kendra's homeschool lit class.
Kendra's Homeschool Lit Class.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll push that
And
out
I'm
as
going
well.
to do a comp class too. Just let me get this one started. I think I'll do a comp class aimed at juniors and seniors college application essays. I thought that was practical.
I had trouble with Comp Class 1, Kendra, so let's just stick with that for right now. And maybe I need to graduate from Comp Class 1 and then I can move on to Comp Class 2. Hey, I got to ask, I've seen that over the past few days that your paper's been showing people where they can access food, supplies, and carryouts, things like this, or why local newspapers like yours are so important, should be supported federally. That's why I'm always disappointed when I see the president chastise the media. Communities deserve to know about what's taking place, and the local news is the best way to stay informed. So thank you for what you're doing. Let us know if we can help in any way.
Oh, sure, you betcha.
Yeah. Anything else we need to do? Hold on a second. He's calling. It says home, stay healthy only.
Yeah, oh my goodness, yeah. It's a scary time we live in.
Awesome.
It really is.
It is. Kendra, what questions do you have? I've been doing the interview today, but you're the newspaper person. What questions do you have for me or about the campaign, if any?
Well, tell me how your campaign has had to change.
Massively. We were on the streets. I'd rather be sitting in your office having these conversations. I've been doing that across the state as we ran around from community to community. I'd walk into the local newspaper. We'd have a cup of coffee and a conversation. Obviously, we can't do that in that fashion today. We had been on the street. We just recently repurposed a RV. We're going to be able to go from community to community. We're on the midst of a Mississippi River tour. When we made the prudent decision to pull everybody off the streets to protect ourselves, our staff, and all the people out there seeing. So the campaigns have changed because now we're communicating like this. We put together a mini studio. It's Brian and I sitting in here. It's 1,000 degrees, I got to tell you. I'm starting to sweat. I don't know what it's going to be like after 3 hours. But we're out reaching out to people in ways that keeps our community safe, but also allows us to continue to have conversations with folks. I got to tell you, I got a great team. I got a great team of folks that have been very adaptable and amendable and nimble, and they're out reaching out to people as we're speaking. So in the midst of this this Q&A session we're having today, our team are on the phone out of the comfort of their homes, or living rooms or apartments, and they're reaching out to voters, having conversations, and they're sending me a list every day of who they're talking to and who I need to follow up with. And that's how things are changing so far.
Right.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see what this does to the primary.
Yeah, it will be. We're all kind of strategizing behind closed doors of what may or may not change with that.
Right.
As you saw, there's some states that postpone or delay their primaries.
Right.
Not sure if that'll happen here or not. I'm sure that I was one of the few states, or not one of the few, but I was one of some states that where you can vote from home. So I imagine we should be helping folks to prepare so they can vote and stay out of harm's way, but still exercise their right to vote. And we're talking about how to do that. Yeah. What other questions you got? Now I'm gonna let you be the interviewer for a minute.
You know what? I just was kind of a last minute thing. I don't think I have any hardballs. I think I'll ask you what I ask all the politicians. Very important question. You ready?
Yes.
What is your favorite book?
Wow.
I know.
So, the Life and Times of Robert Kennedy is my favorite book. But read a lot of stuff by Doris Kearns, a good one. So read her book about Teddy Kennedy, read her book about Abraham Lincoln. Those are great books as well. There's some great reads out there right now that I've had. It's funny you ask me, because every time I talk to somebody, and I'm going to ask you as our last questions, I'm asking people to suggest something for me to read. My iPad and phone are full of ebooks right now, and I'm getting great conversation. I'm having great conversation suggestions from folks from all walks of life. So, Kendra, if you could suggest one book for me to read, what would that be?
Well, you should read The Hate You Give, of course.
Obviously. And then I need to get online and catch up on the homework. I'm behind.
Yeah.
I'll work on that. So, Kendra, thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to the day where we can sit down and have a cup of coffee in person and do an interview.
That'll be wonderful.
Continue to let us know how we can help communities like Dayton. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You know, my healthcare plan calls for some significant investment in rural healthcare to build the infrastructure, to build what's needed in our rural hospitals, to provide the quality of care that are needed, the same as our urban ones. And that's part of what's going on with this COVID epidemic and this challenge in front of us. We're taking care of our rural communities. We cannot treat our hospitals and healthcare systems as profit ventures. We better talk about that a little bit as we figure out how do we treat people as we see more and more sickness. I do got to say there's a piece of breaking news that's coming in from our guys. Mayor Frank County's announced and urged Des Moines residents to stay at home, to stay put. He's calling it stay home, stay healthy, only go out for essentials. I'm hoping that everybody heeds that warning. Our streets should see fewer and fewer cars on the streets. Our grocery stores, I know people out there trying to get some groceries and get themselves set up. Spread yourselves out. Let's see fewer and fewer cars in parking lots at grocery stores and at the Walgreens. And as much as they don't want to hear me say that, we need to do that to help protect ourselves. I think more and more communities need to be doing this. This shouldn't just be Mayor County doing this. I think the governor should be issuing a similar type of directive that our whole state does this. We just heard from Kendra from Dayton, who says people don't see anything happening yet because it's not necessarily knocking on their door. And the weird thing about this virus is that's not how it works. So people say, New York's dealing with it, California and Washington are dealing with it. Funny thing about viruses, they don't run up to the border and say, I can't go into Iowa. I can't go into Illinois. I can't go into Missouri. It's going to keep on moving and keep on spreading. That's what's going to happen. What can we do to help slow the spread? What can we do to help flatten the curve? We need to do our part. We continue to do our part. What else is going on there, Brian? We're going back to Brent. That means I got to put my earpiece back in. Give me 1 second, folks. I'll be right back. Magic. What's up, Brent?
Just wanted to give you an update here on a story that just came through. So, the Register is posting that Walmart is going to be hiring 2,300 temporary workers in Iowa to meet coronavirus demand. They're going to be hiring 150,000 new workers to staff at stores across the nation, but they're looking at over 2,000 new workers here in Iowa. And what they're doing is they're actually, normally you've got a 2-week application window to go work at Walmart. They're actually reducing that down to 24 hours. And, as you know, if you've been following the news, Iowa is facing an unprecedented number of unemployment claims. So this is a little bit of a bright spot. If you go down there and you get hired, you can go on the internet and check it out. You will be getting an extra bonus to hourly employees that are already employed. You'll get a $300 full-time bonus and a $150 part-time bonus. But just one way that they're trying to bring on more workers. And I'm sure, Eddie, you've heard some of the stories about Iowans who are, a lot of them are really struggling with the reality of coronavirus, losing jobs, limited hours, etc. I mean, Eddie, what do you think about that?
So I think it's an opportunity. Obviously, we got bars and taverns and restaurants that have closed across this state. A lot of part-time workers there that are not working presently. So there's an opportunity for some of those workers to get out and apply for those jobs. I do need to ask, and we need to have a conversation about. We don't want to have a whole mess of people showing up at Walmart's either. So hopefully we're doing something by appointments, or somebody's taking at least the initiative to talk about how do we streamline folks that want to apply for these jobs, and maybe our local leaders need to be reaching out to those stores and talking with HR directors about what's going to be a safe way to bring folks in to fill out applications to go through the interviewing process.
Absolutely. And, there's CNN is putting it really simply. They're basically saying coronavirus spreads, raising threat of global economic depression. And, you really always want to be cautious when using those type of terms. But the numbers are startling, folks. The numbers worldwide. You've got 278,000 people who have contracted the virus. And sadly, over 11,000 folks have died. Now, we know here in the state, the number has gone up. The folks who have contracted the virus and been confirmed in a test, that number has gone up. But as we know, the amount of tests go up and the amount of confirmed cases go up. So it's something we're all going to have to be looking at, and different creative ways. Just like this campaign has got different creative ways about campaigning. Folks are going to have to get really interesting and creative about how they're going to keep money flowing in, and employers, etc. Now, I know, Eddie, you've provided paid family leave for your employees for a long time, and I know you're a big champion of that. We've got a couple minutes here before our next 3 o'clock interview. It's going to be Doug Burns calling us up from the Carrol Herald. But why don't you give folks tuning in your stance on paid family leave? I think folks might find it interesting.
Right, so thanks for asking, Brent. And if you go to our website at more.com, you're going to find our 6-point plan for dealing with the coronavirus, the COVID-19 situation we have. Part of that has to do with paid family leave, and it's a pretty aggressive plan. Go check that out. It is something we've been able to do, have been doing at UIG long before it was even talked about, because I just thought it made sense. There's more to life than just our job. And whether our kids or whether our employees are taking care of their children because they're newborns, or taking care of children that are sick. We've had a couple of tragic situations with children in our workforce, or we're taking care of loved ones that are our parents or grandparents. We've always provided ample opportunity for folks to take care of on all spectrums of our life cycle. And it's important that we're able to do that. And statistics is showing that helps build a stronger workforce and work environment. Those statistics are still there today, and I want to continue to challenge all of our elected officials to continue to push for paid family leave for all of our employees. Let's not segregate those with bigger corporations. That would be all employees, and we're working on that. We might have to do some subsidization to help certain businesses to do that, because that's going to be hard for true small business owners. I'm talking about business owners that have maybe a handful of employees, where that's tough for them. And the problem with that is that we have families in Brent that are making tough decisions. Do I go take care of my mom at her end of life service, or do I have to go to work because I'm going to lose my job? Do I take care of my child when they're sick and they need me to be home? Or do I hand that off to somebody else and lose that opportunity to bond with my child because I'm forced to go to work or I'll lose my job? So it only makes sense that we go have a strong paid family leave program.
Yeah, they're incredibly difficult decisions. I mean, we're hearing stories about folks saying, I'm not going to have lunch so my kids can eat today. We are right in the middle of a transition period that no one in this country or world has really ever seen before. So, yeah, definitely, this is on the top of everyone's mind. They're saying right now about 1 in 5 Americans have been affected with their employment, and that number is just going to get higher. Real quick, Eddie, we've got a couple more minutes here, so I wanted to touch about testing here in Iowa. Let's shift gears here. So doctors, CNN's reporting doctors in America's 2 largest cities, that being New York and Los Angeles, doctors in America's 2 largest cities are told to skip coronavirus testing. Now, that seems counterintuitive, so here's what's happening. They're saying that it reflects the case containment is slowing the disease transmission and averting excess mortality. Basically, in layman's terms, the demand for unnecessary testing is contributing to the rapidly diminishing supply of PPE, personal protective gear. That's what, the face masks and the face shields. That sadly, New York Times just reported that China has been they were making half of the masks that the world uses before the coronavirus, and now they're getting those stockpiles because they don't know if their numbers are going to climb back up. But New York and Los Angeles right now are saying that they're going to take a step back from testing because now they're kind of at a state where so many people have it that the act of testing it, they don't have the ability to say, okay, who have you been in contact with? Let's quarantine this person, etc. Now, Eddie, I got a question for you. Yesterday, the governor said there was just over 600 tests available here in Iowa. That's about 1 test for every 5,000 Iowans even available if we wanted to test. Eddie, what are your thoughts? Should Iowa be doing more testing, less testing? What kind of grade would you give the governor?
So right now, there is no grade to give at this point. There's still progress to be made. As I mentioned yesterday, I gave her some kudos for a couple of steps that they had made in yesterday's press conference, both with the explaining of what they're doing with testing, but also what they're trying to do for folks that have been laid off and working on the economic health and welfare they got to deal with. I don't think we have done enough testing yet. The purpose of testing is to collect the data so we can find out where we really stand. And one of the reasons why New York and California are not testing anymore because they already know where they stand. The wave is really hot there, and for them to continue to test is a waste of time and energy. Let's start turning attention to treating folks that are having the virus and trying to find out and be bolder and braver about how we continue to flatten out the curve. Iowa's not quite to that point yet, so I would encourage the governor in Iowa to continue to ask, how do we get more tests here? How do we test more and more people? How do we slow down the spread here in this state? Because it's going to continue to grow. And that's very, very important for us. But at the same point, Brent, what they've done in New York and California is right as well. It can't all be just about the tests. The virus is going to spread. We know it's going to spread, and the purpose of tests is to say, yep, you do have it, or no, you don't have it. But we need to start thinking then about how are we going to make sure that our soldiers, which are healthcare professionals, our nurses, our emergency responders, our pharmacists, all the other people on the front lines, how do we make sure they have the ammo that they need, the resources they need so they can combat the influx of the virus enemy that's about to knock on their door. And we need to spend a lot of time there finding the masks, finding the protective gear that folks need, making sure we have the hospitals, beds, and spaces available to take care of folks. And again, I'm calling on Governor Reynolds. So she gets passing marks in some ways. She's still failing. So I think the National Guard needs to be out. I think we need to have tents ready to go. And if we don't need them because the storm doesn't come, then so be it. We'll fold them back up and put them back in a nice spot and save them for another day. But let's not wait until we need them and find out that we've left somebody behind, that we've lost some lives, haven't been able to treat people, in a way that's necessary because we've delayed, we were apprehensive to take those prudent steps. Thanks for asking though, Brent. I want to remind, before you jump back in, Brent, I want to remind everybody we're opening this up to all questions. So if people have questions, fire them away. I think Brian and team are gathering them in. As we flatten this curve, we're going to continue to have virtual events like these. If you'd like to get involved, visit eddiemarl.com. Very important for us. You can shoot me an email at eddie@eddiemarl.com or visit us or shoot us an email at info@eddiemarl.com. We want to have these conversations. At the same time, I'm multitasking. We're running for the United States Senate, and we're running because our leadership has failed us. And there's going to be a referendum on leadership here in November. And I think that referendum is going to say that we think you all dropped the ball, starting with our president, and next in line will be Senator Joni Ernst, who both had opportunities early in this situation to get out in front, to lead Iowa in this country in a meaningful way, and they failed to do that. And then when they've had opportunities to lead, once they saw this was not a hoax, this was not a purposeful deception, that there really was a situation, that they still stumbled a little bit. And yesterday was a prime example. If you didn't see my comments yesterday on Mr. Trump's comments when they went to him and asked him about fear that people are sensing, and what do you have to say to Americans, and the way he dropped the ball on that question is just dumbfounding for me. And for Ms. Ernst to stand alongside of him and not be able to speak up and speak out in a meaningful way demonstrates the courage that she's lacked in the 5 years she's been a United States Senator. And then we've seen a couple times, Brent, where she's had chances to step up for vulnerable people. She voted twice, I think, on amendment passages on paid family leave. And that's just dumbfounding to me when so many of her folks are going to have to go to work not knowing if they can take the day off because they or a loved one might be exposed or have some other circumstances going on. This is the prime period for a big spike in just influenza and other viruses that we typically get. Now you throw on the top of that the COVID-19 situation, and for her not to step up and recognize that in a meaningful way is disqualifying. So we're going to have a referendum on leadership, and I'm looking forward to having those conversations about how we handle not only this crises, but also the other crises that are facing Iowans and Americans on a daily basis that they were facing before this tidal wave came up and smacked them down again. Tiffany has a live question. How will you address mental health concerns after this COVID? There might be more that experience PTSD, and you're absolutely right, Tiffany. I'm not sure where you're calling from. It. Thanks for checking in with us, Tiffany. I mentioned yesterday that I'm very, very concerned about the physical and mental health of all Iowans and all Americans. And at this point in time, to help support our mental health professionals, to see what we can do to get mental health professionals, maybe some recently retired folks out on the streets again to help meet the needs. I've talked about folks that we all know. We all probably know somebody that battles with mental health situations, and a tough patch might be just around the corner for them, or they're dealing with one now. We want to reach out the best we can and touch those folks. If it's you, if you're out there and you struggle with the mental health circumstance and situation, make sure you have a strategy in place. Make sure that you're talking to a loved one that's going to be there for you when you hit that tough road. Make sure you ping them when you need to, and make sure they reach out to you to help you out. Have that kind of strategy in play so you can do that. I also mentioned, Tiffany, yesterday I worry about folks that have been battling with rehabilitation of addiction issues. A real disease in our country today, whether that's alcohol addiction or opioid addiction or meth or any other addictions that people have. It's going to be harder and harder for us to go have our AA meetings and other meetings to help folks out in there. So continue to reach out to your friends that have been working courageously to overcome that disease or those diseases, or the various. We need to continue to reach out. And then to answer your question more fully, and again, it's one of the other reasons we're running. We dropped the ball at the state and federal level on real mental health outreach in our communities, especially our rural communities, especially our communities of color. And we need to do a better job. And we need to keep working through this crisis we're in front of us. But as we're doing that, Governor Reynolds, what can we do to open up some facilities? What can we do to expand mental health capabilities in rural communities. How do we do that today and make that a priority? And then also what we do at the federal level with Senator Ernst and with our United States Senate and Mr. Trump. What can we be doing to expand mental health capabilities today? But then to your point, how do we make sure we're there after this situation subsides, because there are people that be impacted by PTSD. As crazy as that sounds, probably some people home shaking their heads, are you kidding me? People are sitting home and watching TV for a month or so, but no, there's folks out there that are going to be struggling, that we're already on the verge of having some type of, that on the brink of being having a mental health condition or not having one, and this might put them over the edge. There's some other folks that are dealing with real tough circumstances. Again, yesterday we talked about some loved ones who have lost family members and are trying to deal with that. And that can be disconcerting for people. There's just so many things out there. We really need to talk about this in a meaningful way. So thanks for asking, Tiffany. I appreciate your question. Keep sending them in. Brian's gathering as we're working through on the first hour of our show. Doug Burns from Carrol Times-Herald is here to do a live interview with me in just a couple minutes. Brent, thanks again for continuing to reach out. I think we'll be circling back your way again in a minute. Again, Emmy Award winner Brent Roski on our team. Thanks, Brent. We'll talk to you soon. And now, coming into our show, I don't know how Jerry Lewis does this, Doug, but you got to take a drink sometime. I got to flip my phone over. Doug, you there?
Mr. Mauro, I'm here. How are you? How are things in Des Moines?
Eddie Mauro. Thank Eddie, please. And things are going okay. It's a sunny day here.
You have a lot of family here in Carrol, so you made your announcement here, right? Remember?
I did make my announcement there. We had a good go around, you and I, after I made my announcement there. That was a good banter we had.
We did, and I know a lot of members of your family here, so this is kind of your second home, huh?
It is. I've spent a lot of time in Carrol in my early days and up till just recently. So I still have my godparents live in Carrol still today. My uncle used to work at your newspaper.
I know, Dwayne, right?
Dwayne Honish worked at that newspaper for ages. In fact, he used to show.
He taught me how to use a lot of equipment we don't have anymore.
Well, that's because that was the Fred Flintstone era that they were doing that.
Yeah, he taught me how to do it. I learned a lot about the mechanics of the newspaper operation from him. So I still see him around town.
Yeah, great guy. Well, and he's 90 years old, and you're right. He still goes out and rides his bike every once in a while. Scares all of us. He does that. Been out working in his garden. Probably get ready for some spring planting. Him and my Aunt Anita is my godmother, so I'm very, very fortunate.
I turned 50, Eddie, and I just remembered we gave Dwayne a gold watch. And I was like, I don't know, like 22 or something when you retired. So that's a long time ago. Sorry to cut you off there. But.
No, you're good.
Wait, I know you have limited time, so I thought I'd get to some questions for you. The U.S. Small Business Administration just issued a disaster declaration for Iowa that will allow small businesses to apply for loans. The governor's office just released that probably while you were taking questions, so I wouldn't expect you to know the full details of it, but perhaps you know something about it, or you have some thoughts on that, because as you know, being a businessman yourself, a majority of the businesses out here in rural Iowa are, we're not Google or Amazon. We're, restaurants, small newspapers, shoe stores, other type organizations like that, and people are really suffering. So what are your thoughts on that declaration, Eddie?
So I'm curious. I'd like to learn more about it, and I would suggest, because in my business, I work with small business owners in every community of the state, including a lot right there in Carrol. So a lot of that Main Street and Town Square business, I help touch, and we're seeing all kinds of things going on. Those folks are reaching out to us on a daily basis. In fact, even over the weekend, we have folks working from home that are trying to troubleshoot people that are having drops in income and drops in wages, and want to know how we help them from an insurance perspective. So two things, though, Doug, to your point. I'm leery of loans right now. People don't need more debt. I'm more interested in grants, or if we're going to do loans, and I'm interested in forgivable loans or very, very generous repayment structures, very, very low to no interest, or opportunities for debt forgiveness. If we take those monies and use them in a way that helps sustain that business, sustain jobs, sustain the community. That's my initial reaction to it. I know small business owners right now are bleeding, and it's going to be hard for anybody to go in and put on $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, or or $500,000 in debt when you can't service those loans. So I'm a little, I'm appreciative that they're making at least having some conversations. I'd like to push back and ask our leaders, and you could do the same if you get a chance to talk to Senator Ernst and Senator Grassley to say, I'm not sure that loans is the answer. How about some grants or forgivable loans? What else could we do to really help small business owners?
Well, I think, Eddie, you pinpointed the number one question in a conversation that I'm hearing from small businesses. So you actually answered my follow-up before I could even ask it, and that is a lot of the programs are low-interest loan related right now based on my reading of what the Small Business Administration and other agencies intent on relief are going to do. But it's not like business problems just started 3 weeks ago for a lot of folks in rural Iowa. So the notion for a lot of small businesses here of taking on $100,000 or $150,000 or quite honestly even $25,000 or $50,000 in debt, it's just people and then having to put your house up or put up a building that you may own outright but have your business in, but you've maybe worked for 2 or 3 generations to secure ownership of that building, and now you're going to be asked to put that up in your house just to keep some people employed. You're right. If it doesn't change into a grant situation, I think a lot of people will just either decide to close or declare bankruptcy.
Right. There'll be massive defaults going on. So business. So your first point is right. Before we had this crisis, small businesses and communities like Carrol, and I've been seeing them. I've been to 90 counties now since I first started with you. I think when we met back when we announced in May, we'd been to 25 or 30. We were making our way to 99 before we pulled our team off the street. But in about every community, Doug, I was seeing small businesses struggling. I'm seeing Main Street and Town Square business struggling for a number of reasons. Some of it has to do with policies that are out on those that I think are negatively impacting those communities, whether that's rural education, rural hospitals, rural mental health. Obviously, I think the ag industry was impacted significantly by the trade war. So those folks were already hurting a little bit, and we needed to figure out how do we pump them up with some meaningful grants and loans. But now you throw on top this new bomb of a COVID-19, and now is not the time, I don't think, for loans. I think now is the time for grants and aid to help small businesses stay in business. As you know, it's a large number of our employers and employees work through really mom and pop small businesses, just like you'll see on your Main Street in Town Square there in Carrol. You don't have a Town Square, but on your Main Street there in Carrol, and all the main streets and town squares around the state. So I'm asking everybody to push back a little bit. In fact, we're going to do another town hall on Monday where we're talking about pushing back on our leaders to do something really meaningful for everybody from the ground up, for our most vulnerable people in our communities to our true small business owners. A lot for us to be talking about.
So, Eddie, what hasn't Senator Ernst, you're seeking to replace Senator Ernst in the U.S. Senate, what hasn't she done that she should be doing when it comes to responding, through her office, either by voting or by other action for the people of Iowa? How, in your opinion, has she let us down or come short during this crisis?
Yeah, right. Thanks for asking. I think it's a great question because I think the election is now turning to a referendum on leadership. And as I mentioned before, I think she's lacked some leadership from the outset, but it's definitely been evident now. I think she was slow to the game with the situation was on, which I think set us back and can ultimately cost us great misery and maybe lives. I think her voting twice the other day on the amendments on paid family leave is a slap in the face to hardworking Iowans of every kind in every community who are in the midst of what is the greatest crisis we've had since World War II. I would like most people would agree that's the case. She's had a chance to really push through and advocate for a meaningful universal basic income. And I think that she's come up woefully short there in advocating for families to have $1,000 a month in their pocket. I think, Doug, a one-time payment is not going to cut it. It's just not going to cut it. People already lost their jobs. People are already going to the Iowa workforce and development facilities around the state to ask for unemployment benefits. They're going to get a fraction of their pay there. $1,000 is not going to last long enough because this event's going to last for months and months. So unless we have a strategy that's going to help families know that somebody's going to be there for them after the first month, then I think she's still woefully short there. I think what we're doing on making sure we're protecting our first responders, our doctors, our nurses, and others has been woefully inadequate. She's had some chances to stand up and push back, but you've seen it firsthand. Everybody underneath the thumb of Mr. Trump has always been afraid to stand up and speak up, and that's been troubling when we really need some real leadership today. You saw what happened yesterday with what I thought was just a reasonable question, which is, hey, Mr. Trump, there's people out there afraid, and what can you tell them? And imagine you're sitting in that seat there. I can even picture you sitting in that seat there and have him just pretty much yell at you. That's ridiculous that you would ask such a question. When I thought it was a beautiful question to ask somebody that you might be asking Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, asking Franklin Roosevelt during World War II, or asking George Bush in the rubble of 9/11 in New York City. And to have that kind of response is just dumbfounding to me, and not have her ever speak up about those types of actions and say that's just wrong, is where I see a lack of leadership. And as I mentioned early on when I first announced, that lack of leadership has been missing from the outset, and we deserve better than that.
So early on in that thorough answer, Eddie, you suggest that Senator Ernst was, in your words, slow to the game, and that might be costing lives. That's a pretty heavy allegation that her lack of action is literally going to kill people. What specifically was she slow-footed on that you think might be killing people now or will kill people? So
people were raising the alarm back in January about this. They were raising this alarm to the administration. They were raising this alarm to the United States Senate, and that's evident because we have some United States senators, a couple of Republicans and even a Democrat, it looks like, that started dumping stocks, which is very disconcerting. So senators knew about this back in January, and the alarm should have been, the bell should have been tolled at that time. We should have been making plans at that time. Back in 2018, senators reached out to their whole group and to the president and said, you guys have disbanded our lead team on pandemic response, and that is reckless. And again, for her not to speak up and stand up at that time and said, you're absolutely right. We need to have that ready for us. I used to be in the National Guard. We always want to be prepared. And to allow that to be disbanded is like disbanding all of your leadership when the war's going to start. So I think those are specific instances where I think she's dropped the ball. And I think, again, that lack of leadership, that lack of foresight is something we need in a United States Senator, especially in the world today. This isn't the last pandemic we're going to see. This isn't the last crisis that we're going to see. And we want to make sure we have the next United States Senator needs to be more forward-thinking, needs to hear experts on the street, needs to make sure that we're always preparing for the next crisis that's going to rise for us.
You mentioned the stock trading issue with regard to 4 U.S. senators, Loeffler and Feinstein.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Richard Burr from North Carolina would be the highest profile in that situation, and then Inhofe from Oklahoma. Burr seems to be the one who, because he is Intelligence Committee chair, he seemed to have the information and maybe access to more information than others, and his trading number was pretty high, and then just the timing of it right after he was involved in writing an op-ed, kind of giving us the all clear. Do you see all 4 of them being, equally culpable here? Do you see Burr being worse? Do you see Loeffler being worse? And beyond that, should members of Congress even be able to own stock, once they're elected?
All good questions. So I think time will tell. I think right now it's a head scratcher for all 4 of them. I think they all need to be able to communicate to people the reasoning behind their actions. Right now, it's all suspect. I think everybody would believe that it's suspect. To your other question, should anybody be able to have stock? I don't think owning stock is the problem. I think that there needs to be different rules for the acquisition and selling of stock once you're a United States Senator, potentially, if we're going to do anything. But to have somebody know information like that and then to make a move that basically save them potentially millions of dollars is not fair and not just in any way. So, those are things that are out there. The other thing I need to mention really quick is that she voted twice against the UBI. She voted, as I mentioned earlier, against paid family leave. It really puts families at risk. So, good questions, good points, and we got a lot to talk about.
Mentioning that UBI, first of all, don't you think Andrew Yang kind of looks like a prophet? I mean, maybe an accidental prophet, but certainly, he introduced that term into the mainstream discussion. Obviously, universal basic income has been a topic since the Revolutionary War era, when some of our founding fathers even discussed the topic. But you mentioned UBI, saying $1,000 a month isn't enough. What should a universal basic income be right now? And should it be indexed based on geography? Meaning, obviously, the cost of living in Des Moines is higher than Carroll. The cost of living in New York City is higher than Des Moines. Right.
So let me clarify. I don't think a one-time payment, which is being advocated now by the United States Senate, of $1,200 to $1,500, which actually isn't what everybody gets. Some folks that are really struggling might get $600. That is not enough. I'm interested in $1,000 per month for every American over 18 years of age.
How long should that last, Eddie?
I think it lasts through the crisis at a minimum. So that should be monthly through the crisis at a minimum. I mean, Doug, I think we're on the verge of a recession, no doubt about it. We could be on the verge of a depression, which sounds kind of scary. But the jobless rate is going to skyrocket. Businesses are going to close. And again, I'm watching small businesses because that's what I do here on a daily basis. And they're not going down gradually. They've fallen off the cliff. And that's going to be a problem for us here in the immediate future. And that's going to be a long-term problem for us for a number of months as we deal with the COVID crisis. So if you look at, and I've told people to go to our website, and if you haven't been there, you can check it out or share it with your readers and folks you talk to at eddymorrow.com. We have a 6-point plan on there. Part of that is UBI. It is for the crisis initially, and we'll kind of see how that goes from there. And it's worth having a conversation beyond that, which is what Andrew Yang talked about before we had this crisis. So I think it only makes sense definitely during this crisis. I think it should be a tool we use if we come across another pandemic or other kind of crisis where we have this type of a disruption in our health and welfare, both economically and physically and mentally. That's what I'm advocating for right now.
Okay, well, Eddie, thanks a lot. I can keep asking questions, but I know other people want to get on this open line with you. So hopefully, when we get through this, I'll look forward to seeing you and Carrol. I have a lot more questions, and I know you want to talk about a lot of other issues. So let's just plan on having a pork tenderloin and a new beer at our Carrol Brewing Company when you get up here. Once we hopefully have the all clear.
So let me ask you 2 questions before you go. If you got a second, you got a second?
Of course.
So this is my show. I'm supposed to be asking the questions, but that's all right. I'm just kidding.
Go ahead.
Hey, listen. So 2 things. You mentioned the brewery up there, and I don't know if you saw, but there's breweries down here that that are taking their distilleries because of the alcohol they have, and they're making sanitizers. Have you heard from
Scott Bush, who co-founded Templeton Rye? His new distillery, I read, is doing that. So I'm calling Scott right after I talk to you to talk about what he's doing with that.
Awesome. And then can you tell us just quickly, because we talked to Kendra from Dayton, she works for the newspaper there, but can you just give everybody else that's listening today just a quick rundown of what are you hearing and sensing and seeing in Carrol?
Sure. Well, obviously, people are frightened. There is no such thing as a silver lining to a pandemic, but one thing that I have noticed that is positive is I am noticing a lot more grace and a lot less vitriol, a lot more grace when you interact with people in person, a lot less vitriol online. There still is, unfortunately, a decent amount of it. We have one confirmed case in Carroll County, making us something of an outlier. But that individual who I know and respect a great deal, on a variety of levels, quarantined and have been very responsible. We don't have any community spread here. Our newspaper launched a free online dining takeout and delivery guide, which has been wildly popular. So we put information and menus up on our site, and then we've been promoting it aggressively. And businesses have adjusted their hours to be able to get food out. Taco John's here in Carroll, they're offering free meals, free pickup meals for senior citizens, no questions asked. So there's just a lot of acts of kindness. Obviously, rural Iowa and rural America in general, with access to healthcare has been a big issue. We're fortunate that we have St. Anthony Regional Hospital. You've been here to Carroll, Carroll. So our hospital looks like what you would see in like Johnston, or what it's kind of a mothership type hospital. It's a big regional facility that serves a region of probably more like 30 to 40,000, even though we're a community of 10. So I think we're maybe better positioned, to deal with that. People are definitely doing social distancing. And I think people are being, for the most part, responsible. But we have a high percentage of the old in Iowa in general, and we have a lot of people in rural Iowa that have lower incomes, that have respiratory problems, that have some weight issues just because of some of the lifestyle choices and economic deprivation that they've had to deal with prior to this. So that's troubling. And then watching small businesses, which have already been hammered by Amazon. When I was in Des Moines last week, I saw that fulfillment center go up in Grimes, and it made me sick, because very soon people will be able to bypass local stores and get same-day delivery from Amazon. So it doesn't surprise me that there's tons of apartment complexes going up around that Amazon center. But during this crisis, it's just exacerbating what's been happening with many small businesses, and they are in desperate need of relief. So it's great that United Airlines is getting bailed out. It's great that the airlines are getting bailed out. But there needs to be a focus on small businesses, the restaurateurs here, the shoe stores here, the jewelry stores here. Mm-hmm. We need relief in rural America too.
You're absolutely right. So thanks for giving us that overview, and that's one of the reasons, Doug, why I think I would make a remarkable United States Senator and the senator that this state needs today, because of my small business acumen, amongst many other things. But to know what those folks have been dealing with for a long time, to watch the rise and fall and the rise and now another fall, and what we need to be doing, I think that sets me apart from everybody else that's running. I'm looking forward to continue to talk to you. Let's get through this crisis together. Let's stay in touch if we can. I do look forward to having a personal conversation and a tenderloin someday soon.
All right.
Thanks for having us today. Take care.
Okay, take care.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.
Holy cow, it's a great conversation with Doug Burns. Was so proud to be able to make our initial announcement in Carroll, because that is the home of my mom. And to go up there and see that community, even though that community leans a little bit right today, there are people up there that on both sides of the aisle that are impacted. And there's folks up there where they lean a little bit conservative, lean a little bit to the left side, that had the same challenges. And one of the things we've been talking about in our campaign is to talk to folks in a meaningful way that we have similar challenges, and we need to break down what the real truth is out there about what those challenges are, because we have a lot more in common than what divides us. I gotta say, the lives, there's lives on the line every day. And Joni Ernst has not been pushing through UBI. She hasn't been pushing through paid family leave. We didn't do a good enough job on emergency test funding. Our response has been woefully inadequate, and at both the state and the federal level, we need to do more. So we're looking forward to us to doing a better job with our leadership. We'll continue to press Ms. Ernst and others. I'm particularly concerned about our homeless folks, the families living paycheck to paycheck, which is about 80% of Iowans. I'm concerned about our immigrant community who might be avoid seeking services out of fear. I'm concerned about our gig workers. because of the type of economy that they've been living in that we're not quite geared up for just yet. Millions of Americans may not be able to afford their next rent payment. But Ms. Ernst has not been present enough, and I continue to propose the immediate suspension of all the water payments that are going on, electric payments, internet bills, rent payments, mortgage payments, as well as a nationwide moratorium on evictions and utility shutoffs during this time. We just need to continue to talk about these things. So, again, it's great to talk to Doug. Again, a very, very much part of my life is Carroll, Iowa. I remember a few weeks back I spoke with a young woman about how the hell do we carry on out and drive through alcohol stations and not drive through testing stations. We've got a lot of work to do out there. We'll continue to do that. We're going to go back to Brent, who's coming up here in about 10 seconds. So, Brent, get yourself all geared up. Back to technology. Here we go. We're going to have Brent coming on the line.
Hey, folks, boy, what a great chat there with Doug Burns. And, Kendra and Doug, thank you both so much for joining us today. Journalists, members of the media out there who are watching us, reach out if you want to chat with our candidate. But huge thanks to Kendra and Doug. Doug, I have had the good fortune of getting to know a little bit, and he is just he is a one-man machine up there over in Carroll. So thank you so much to Doug. One thing we're doing right now, folks, there is, in fact, as we do this live telestream, the longest telestream, live stream any candidate has ever done in Iowa history to date. While this is happening, our field team is making phone calls, and I am excited to report that we have made over 540 calls. So nice job, field team. And we got to give a shout out to Darius. It looks like Darius has made the most calls.
Darius.
Some of the things that they're talking about, they're talking about paid family leave. They're talking about testing for the virus. But one thing, if you have received a call from our field team and you want to chat with Eddie Mauro, we're going to be here live for another hour and a half, another 90 minutes. Live television is one of my favorite things to do. Folks here in Iowa might remember me. I subbed in a lot for Great Day. I was on every Thursday on Great Day, and then I did Roski on Politics for a couple of years here. So I just think what a fun thing to be doing, and a huge kudos to the field team for getting all those calls made. Let's jump back into to give you folks a heads up what we're going to be doing for the rest of the 90 minutes here. Seth Watkins is an organic farmer. He's going to be coming up here in just a couple minutes. He's going to be dialing in at 3:30. And then we've got John Niederbach's going to talk about the census. At 4 o'clock, Samba Kam, she's actually a part of our team. She's going to talk a little bit about immigration policy and maybe share some of her own story about coming here as a refugee when Governor Bob Ray was in office. And then our final guest today, well, potential, but someone we're very excited to have on the show, Iowa State Representative Ross Wilburn. Ross was elected in a special election up there. He's a former mayor of Iowa City, ran for governor, and got elected to state rep by, I think, 98%. Folks love him up there in Ames. But real quick, before we get to Seth, on my line here, which is fun, we're going to, she's on speakerphone. Christine Curry is also part of Team Mauro, and she's a part of the water panel, the World Water Day panel tomorrow. So I thought real quick, Christine, if you just want to give 20 seconds and tell folks what they would be hearing tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. I'm super excited about this event, and I just wanted to say a little shout out for Eddie. He is just really walks the walk and is genuine with the environment, which is very close to my heart, and that is one of the main reasons I'm supporting Eddie, because he really understands the need to act on climate and water quality and the environment. And this year marks the 27th year for the United Nations World Water Day, and they have incorporated climate in conjunction with water. So we'll be discussing climate and water on tomorrow with some amazing guests that we have on our speakers on our panel. One is a 12-year-old environment climate advocate. She's a 6th grade student from Summit Middle School here in Johnston, Iowa. Her name is Lily Hill. She's 12 years old, and she is just amazing, and you'll hear some of her efforts tomorrow. We also will be interacting with Dr. Peter Levi, who is a professor of environmental science and sustainability at Drake University. He's just a really up-and-coming water quality specialist, and he'll be sharing some of his thoughts on how to go forward with some of the results of his research.
Great.
And we'll be speaking with Chris Henning, who is a regenerative farmer from Greene County, Iowa. She's been featured at many conferences, and she's an excellent example of promoting good practices with cover crops and natural prairie strips, and how you can improve water quality.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a special international ecosystem global health scientist and professor from George Mason University, Dr. Alonso Aguirre, and he'll be talking with us about the relationship to climate, water quality, and emerging diseases, just like the coronavirus.
Gotcha.
And and then we have Travis Frank, who is from Iowa. He's a climate scientist and MIT graduate, and he works with an organization called Climate Interactive, and he'll be talking to us about some of his latest models incorporating agriculture, water quality, and climate.
Perfect.
And,
all right. Well, Christine, I'm gonna let you fill it in a little bit later. I'm getting a nod here from the thing that we've got. Is Seth has Seth dialed in, folks? Over there. Oh, we got. So, Christine, we're gonna have you fill in, and folks, that's tomorrow. And one of the folks. Thank you, Christine, so much for being with us. And tomorrow is that panel she was just telling about. But on the phone right now is one of those panelists, Seth Watkins. Why don't you guys take it away?
Yeah, so Seth works for Pinhook Farms, and he and I met many months ago. Got a chance to see him do a presentation about regenerative agriculture and the good work that he's done and what he's been doing to try to help others. Also learn to look at their practices that they're doing. Seth, welcome to the Mauro for Tomorrow virtual station.
Hi, Eddie. It's great to hear your voice.
Thank you. If you get a chance, Seth, first of all, tell us a little bit about what you've done at your farm, and just about a minute or so. Just give us kind of a quick highlight of what you've done there that would be good practices for other farmers in Iowa.
Well, I guess I'd stress, I think Iowa's farmers really are doing the best they can and do a great job. I think one of the challenges goes to policy that sometimes winds up with many of us having to choose between a policy that encourages oversupply and consumption versus one that focuses on caring for this great Iowa land we're so blessed with. So, I just love cows and was able to keep my land in pasture and was fortunate to have some people that have stuck behind me through this. And in doing so, I learned some of the benefits of things that do protect our water and protect our land. And now I'm finding out these same practices, science is teaching me these same practices really have an impact on our climate because of their ability to sequester carbon. And these are things actually have proven to regenerate the resources we depend upon so much.
Hey,
so,
Seth, can you for the folks that aren't completely clear about sequestering carbon and cap and trade, can you talk about that really quickly? What does that look like in layman's terms?
In layman's terms, if something is green and growing on the land, that means carbon's coming out of the atmosphere and going back into the soil. Where we're putting living roots and matter back in the soil, it's actually carbon. And it's where it does us a lot of good as we restore that soil and its ability to, support our system. I think a great example, a real simple layman's terms example, if you go, say you took a big container of soil, the size of a four-wheeler. I'm sitting on my four-wheeler in the barn right now, and you planted an oak tree in that container. And you came back in 50 years, that oak tree is going to weigh a ton. And it certainly didn't come necessarily from things in the ground. It came from the carbon that tree sequestered out of the ground and changed,
went from atmospheric carbon into carbon that the tree was made out of. You know, carbon's amazing. It's light, and it's what we're all made of, and it's so important. But what we've got to do is work on getting the carbon where it belongs. You know, that's the important thing. That's the beauty of agriculture, is that so many of these practices, as we drive around Iowa, maybe you see cover crops growing right now. I mean, March is always a really dreary time, and it really brightens my spirits to drive by and see something bright green growing in a field when everything else is kind of gray and brown around it.
Right.
But the fact that you see those cover crops out there, that they're putting carbon back in the soil, which is so important. Now, the other thing, because of the roots and things like that, that whole umbrella of carbon-friendly agriculture is the same thing that keeps the nutrients we really need on our farms and out of our water, and helps our farms to, you know, not only become more productive, but to be socially responsible. You know, we need all these inputs, and as our world grows, it's going to become even more critical that we have them. And again, this is something to be excited about if we can just get our country to really embrace it at scale.
Right. And I've been telling folks as I've been running around the state that I think our farmers, and you already know this, but could be at the forefront of tackling the climate crisis that's in front of us, to use that soil to draw down emissions for regenerative agriculture practices that'll help us be at the forefront, create revenue streams for our farmers, which in turn will create revenue streams into our main streets and town squares. Just a win-win everywhere. What do we need to do to help farmers make that move, to make that happen? Because right now we don't have enough. As you mentioned, if you're driving around, and you're in southeast Iowa, as you're driving around, you might see some farms that have covered crops. I still think we're less than 10%, maybe even less than 5% still, of our state are using that practice. How do we get more farmers to do that?
We really have to have a national shift back to focusing on most appropriate land use first, and this regeneration of our resources. And I think 1989 or 1990, our Farm Bill was focused entirely on production. And I know it was well-intended to help farmers, but oftentimes, you know, well-intended thoughts have negative unintended consequences, is the best way I could say that.
Right.
And what we're seeing because of this production focus is a huge oversupply of corn. Corn's not a bad thing, but when we raise too much of it, then it becomes a problem. So we have a huge oversupply of grain. And I guess what I'm frustrated with is we proved from like 1933 with the first Ag Adjustment Act to 1985 that what's called supply management is a great first step in helping farmers, protecting our land, protecting our rural communities. So, you know, when you've dug a hole, we don't have to entirely reinvent the wheel yet, but we really need to take a hard look at the farm bills from previous to 1985 and go back to supply management. This would allow us to protect our more fragile land. You know, there's over 100 million acres of highly erodible land and wetlands within just the Mississippi River watershed.
Right.
And this is land that we really don't need to be farming right now, but it's important we work with farmers to protect that for when we really do need it. And that was one of the beauties of, you know, the old soil bank or set-aside acres. But now we have technology available that we can do that in a really smart way that can accelerate this and really help farmers. That when we go to supply management, the first thing we do is stabilize price. And by doing that, by protecting the fragile land that we need someday, I think is really important. You know, I've pointed out we have a strategic petroleum reserve in our country, and we have a few programs to kind of soil bank land like CRP, but we need to set this up. We need a federal land reserve, and this is the chance to do that. But you know, the other thing I think we need to be, the other thing I'll touch on that has me concerned and why I'm maybe so frustrated, there's obviously people in genuine need right now, and I'm so thankful to all the people that are working so hard to protect Americans and care for Americans that are in real need. But our Farm Bill has a schedule to plant 95 million acres of corn this year. That's the second largest acreage ever. And when we've been seeing lower and lower prices, when we've been seeing nutrient pollution in our rivers and streams, when we're seeing farmers suffering because of low prices, why in the world are we encouraging 95 million acres of corn to be planted? and I'll go into some what if. What if we started looking at some of the aspects of even the Green New Deal? What if we started looking at other ways to invest in agriculture? I hate to segue over, but one of the things I've thought so much about, there's a lot of people in the supply chain in agriculture, whether it's, immigrant workers or some of the people in the packing plants. I just finished reading Art Cohen's book, Storm Lake. So it's made me think about a lot of people that maybe I've taken for granted.
Right.
That are really, really important to me in agriculture. And I think right now our focus needs to be on making sure they've got a good quality of life, but making sure some of those people that make our world really work, from the person working in the packing plant to the fast food worker that's putting their that's out there for us right now, meeting us at the drive-up window,
Right.
serving the products we raise, making sure that they know that, number one, we appreciate them, and number two, that we're working to make sure that they're treated fairly, because right now it's the whole issue with COVID-19 has made me really think about and aware of how important some people that even I've probably taken for granted in the past are. And I just want to make sure as we work through this, we don't forget them, and that we're building policy that takes care of them, and not policy that encourages us just to raise grain on land that we shouldn't farm and grain that we know don't need. It's just a priority of where we spend this money.
Yep. No, we got
this together, and it's a public-private partnership, but we've got to put people first.
And one of the great things I've learned from you and many others that I've been talking in the ag industry is that we are in this together. And one of the things you just mentioned, and what I've been talking about a lot, is we have so much more in common. You talked about the fast food worker that's serving our food. You talked about the people working in our communities and our farmers. One of the reasons we're running, Seth, is because we've had other leaders that have allowed those communities to be divided. We've divided our farmers from the folks working in town or working in our cities and urban centers and suburban centers that do serve those meals at the drive-thru today. And we need to talk about what we have common interests, common goals, common pains, and work together. We need to have a common interest and common cause. It's one of the reasons that I'm running. And I got to tell you, brother, I'm going to have to cut you off because we got another guy we're going to bring on. You and I need to have a show together, a long show. You're going to be... Go ahead.
This is why I believe in you. You're a teacher, you're a community builder, and you're a job creator. You're exactly what we need.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it much, Seth. We'll have you back on. You're gonna become like the Jerry Seinfeld of our show. We're gonna have you on multiple times in the days and the weeks ahead. So we look forward to having you again. Thanks so much. Enjoy your day out there today on your four-wheeler. God bless. Take care.
Thanks, Daddy.
Bye. And he is he's solid. And I tell people regularly that I am where I am today. Here you go, Brian. Can you catch? I have my baseball bat. I'm bringing a glove tomorrow. I'm going to show some pitching stuff tomorrow. But I am where I am today because I've been mentored by some great people that helped me become a pretty good teacher, a pretty good coach, that helped me become an okay father. That helped me become a pretty good business leader, that's positioned me to do a lot of community service and organizing activism work, the things I've been doing now for almost 30 years. I've been very, very blessed to get out and listen to folks and hear them and understand them and feel them, and working with folks like Seth and talk about how we need to have a new era in agriculture. And that's not going to be easy because a lot of our farmers have already ideas about what they need to be doing or where they're going. But one of the reasons that I will be a remarkable United States Senator is to bring all those folks together, to get around the table and have conversations for people that agree with me and don't agree with me. I'm looking forward to even work with the Farm Bureau if that comes to fruition, and figure out how do we help our family farms, how do we help our farmers, how do we help work in these rural communities to make sure the backbone of this state, which are rural communities and our rural farms, can be vibrant now and into the future. And how we then can, and you have farmers talking like Seth, talking about the Green New Deal. Holy cow, not a lot of farmers that don't mention that. But how do we make that part of reality? And those are the kind of things that I've done in my past. Even as daunting as it is, I've gone on and done some great projects and just led the way and gotten them done, even against all the odds there might be against us that says, no, you can't. No, you can't. The answer is, yes, we can, and we will. And we can go and move the ball forward. We are going to be moving on. We got Brent coming back. Brent's coming back. Brent, are you here?
Hey guys, yeah, just boy, what a great chat there with Seth. Always great to hear from folks doing good work with the land. So kudos to Seth, and we're really excited to learn more from Seth in the panel tomorrow on Water Day. We're going to be calling in John Niederbach in just a second here, but we just wanted to pass along just to kind of keep this as a news content as well. We mentioned it earlier in the show, but at 2:31 today, it was published Des Moines Register. Mayor Frank County advising residents to only leave home for essentials in Des Moines. So if you do not have to be leaving your house, the mayor is saying voluntarily stay home. If you got to get groceries, medicine, or health care, go ahead if you have to. But they're saying for at least 2 weeks to help reduce the spread of the virus in Iowa's capital city, stay home if you can. So I'm going to send it back to you folks. Up next, John Niederbach is a very, very active Democrat here in the state. He's working on the census. And I can see Scott right now, our producer. Scott, do we have John on the line? Awesome. I'm going to let it back to you guys in the studio.
Hey, and remember, if you got questions out there, to fire them away at us. Did you write that phone down? Thank you, sir. We want to take questions during this virtual event we're having on the More for Tomorrow network. That's now growing every day. We want to remind you that we have our team out on the phones today. We'll be getting an update from Luke Hoffman and Brittany, who are leading that team and the charge with that team, and also Angelo. I got some great team folks out there leading a boatload of folks on the phones today, reaching out to people. So hopefully we'll get some stats on that. Right now, I got joining us on the phone, though, is John Niederbach. John, welcome to the More for Tomorrow radio or TV show. How you doing, brother? Can you hear us all right? Uh-oh. Wait a minute. One of us is on mute. How about that? Hello, John. I just introduced you, said a whole bunch of good things about you, but you're on mute, so I got to say them all again. So just want to welcome John to the Mauro for Tomorrow TV show. We're discussing today the census. John, what's your role in the census?
Well, I'm one of many office operations supervisors in the Des Moines Area Census Office. Des Moines is the only area census office in Iowa, so we're organizing the census outreach for the entire state.
So what are the current plans, John, for the census, especially particularly about door-to-door operations? Last we heard they've suspended some of that. What are you hearing? What's going on?
Yes, there are a whole bunch of different phases, or we call them operations, going on in order to count everyone. The motto of a census is to count everyone only once and in the right place. And in order to do that, the bulk of people, the great majority of people, will get an invitation in the mail. Probably most people listening have already gotten that. And they'll have a code in that letter. And a couple of days later, they get a reminder letter. I go to a computer or a tablet or a phone and complete the census response online. It's really easy, takes less than 10 minutes, unless you have, maybe if you have, 15 people in your household, it might take a little longer. Yeah. But for the vast majority of people, it's very quick and easy, and we're hoping to get, I think so far we've gotten around 18% of the addresses responding so far. That's just started. I'm sure we'll get a large number in Iowa, and that's really the bulk of it. It turns out that was really good planning. I mean, obviously nobody foresaw the pandemic, but the way it's worked out, you couldn't have a better way to do a census in time of pandemic, because online is totally safe, of course. Yep. Now, for folks who are in group quarters, we define that as nursing homes and a variety of other things, living arrangements, there'll be people visiting those facilities or dropping materials off, and the facility will fill it out. Folks who are homeless, there's a whole effort being planned. It was supposed to happen next week, and now it's being delayed for a couple of weeks. But there are a whole bunch of outreach workers who have been hired to go out and contact folks who don't live in normal housing situations.
Right. Hey, John, tell us, why is the census important?
Well, the first thing, of course, is the Constitution established that every 10 years there would be a census in order to do redistricting.
Right.
In order to decide how many Congress people each state has, you have to have a census in order to apportion the congressional seats among the various states and draw districts.
Right. So the Constitution does it?
The Constitution requires it. It says the census should be taken as specified by Congress. Congress has spelled out a whole lot of different details about it, but the basic idea is we're counting everybody in order to apportion not only Congress people, but also then the state uses it to draw district boundaries for the legislature. And quite honestly, other folks use it to draw district boundaries for things like school boards and city council and county supervisors.
What's it do about what's it do for any funding, John?
Well, that's the other thing. More recently, because of federal funding gains, a huge portion of local government operations and government operations in general, billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, are allocated by population.
Right.
Both how much Iowa gets as a state, how much, let's say, Des Moines or West Des Moines or any of the different cities get, how much the counties get, and all kinds of different programs.
Right.
So it's incredibly important, but everybody respond and fill out the form online, or some people got paper forms, or some people actually have an enumerator visit their house, but it's incredibly important to respond to make sure we don't lose political power that we should have, and also we don't lose money that the federal government would be giving us that we're entitled to.
So a number of minority activist groups, John, have been raising concerns about the potential for undercutting due to Trump's citizen question. There
is no citizenship question on the census in 2020.
Yeah.
There is no citizenship question. There was a proposal to put one on there that ran into legal troubles, and then I believe the Trump administration decided not to appeal, and there is no citizenship question on the census.
Right, but there's been a fear of that out there. I'm not sure and people are a little bit leery because they heard that was out there.
Right.
To try to scare people from answering the questions, especially minority folks, especially Latinos. And now we got the COVID-19 outbreak as well. And you mentioned you guys are doing a lot of this by phone and remotely to keep people healthy. But is there anything that our campaign can do to help ease concerns on minority communities?
Well, I think it's just very important to get the word out that there is no citizenship question on the census. And then also, all information is kept confidential. Every single census worker has to raise their hand and swear, take an oath, to keep every bit of information, every bit of personally identifiable information confidential. And it can last throughout your life. All information is kept confidential for 72 years. So obviously, by the time that gets released, it won't be much of an issue in terms of people today have to worry about. It is kept confidential, and that there is no linkage. It is not shared with other federal agencies.
Right. So, and we'll do that. So we'll make some public service announcements and communications throughout all of our streams. And we're talking, and if you saw us earlier, we're talking to a lot of faith leaders as well, in both the African American and Latino communities. And we want to make sure that everybody gets counted. It's so important that happens. Hey, you got any questions for me, John, at all? Any questions for me before we let you go?
No, I see your things all around. I know you're waging a very aggressive, enthusiastic campaign, and I think we got bunch of really strong, what is it, a total of 5 candidates now, I think?
I think so.
And I think a lot of folks realize that that is going to be a very competitive race. So we'll see how it all boils out.
We will. And I'm looking forward to June 2nd. So thanks for your time, John. You have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Take care, Eddie.
John Niederbach, talking to us a little bit about the census today. We're going to run our way back to Brent really quick. Do we have Brent here? Brent, are you there?
It's just a really, John is a passionate activist here in the state, obviously with the census now. So a huge thanks out to John for jumping on the live stream here. Wanted to share some positive news here about this. Some positivity in regards to the pandemic. So headline, Des Moines Register, loans available to small businesses. United States Small Business Administration has issued a disaster declaration for Iowa, allowing what they're calling pandemic impacted small businesses to apply for low interest loans. Governor Kim Reynolds, she announced that Saturday. The economic injury disaster loans, they offer up to $2 million in assistance to small businesses and private nonprofit organizations. And these interest rates, boy, I don't know if you folks have been following business news, but interest rates are low right now. And these new small business loans, they're looking at 3.75 for small businesses, and for nonprofits, 2.75. Applications, disasterloan.sba.gov. We'll put that up there. But boy, you know, Eddie, isn't it so important when you're a small business to get the funding when you need it? And something like this could really help out some folks, huh?
I think it could. And Doug Burns and I had a conversation about this and about Main Street and Town Square business, and why the overture is welcome. I'm concerned about the loans. With businesses really struggling, the ability to debt service a loan right now isn't that great. And to put up all the assets you've already built up to take on that loan, it can be concerning. So I'm a little bit concerned. I'm more interested in looking at some small business grants and aid for small businesses that are struggling. If we're going to go bail out the airline industry to the tune of $50 billion, I'm not sure we're asking for that money back. That we should be providing the same types of grants and aid to small business owners that aren't necessarily loans. Or if we're going to be giving loans, there better be some debt forgiveness in them if those borrowers take certain actions like keeping, maintaining, adding staff, or doing some things in their community. But unless the airline industry is taking out a $50 billion loan, I'm not sure that we need to ask Joe's Pub and Grill or Sarah's daycare center or anybody else to have to take out a loan to survive this downturn either. They should be getting similar types of grants and aids to continue to employ people, stay in business, pay their rents, the same things that the airline industry is asking for. That's what they need that money for. They need the money to pay for their debt servicing, for their terminal leases, for their mortgage payments. And if I'm not mistaken, that's not a loan going to those folks. That's a direct payment bailout, basically. So let's not just bail out the people at the top. Let's talk about making sure that we're reaching everybody, including that person in Dayton, Iowa that's struggling, that small business owner in Carrol, Iowa that's struggling, or any other community that's out there struggling. We got to do something meaningful for those true small businesses, because altogether, Brent, they employ a lot of people, just as many as the airline industry does, or just as impactful to our economy as the airline industry is, as the hotel motel industry is, or all those small business owners, each of our communities. And again, I think it's one of the reasons that sets me apart. I understand what's going on with those folks. I've risen and fallen with them on a few cycles. We're in a downturn now. We need really meaningful action. So again, it is a bit of good news. At least they're thinking about it. But I think we need to think even further and deeper and more boldly, and not just make this loans, but some grants and aid.
I love it. Before we jump over to Samba Kam, she's on the line. She's with the team, and her and Eddie are going to have a great chat about immigration, etc. I just wanted to give folks a heads up. If you're following along with Eddie's 6-point plan pandemic response, one of the items in there was about the National Guard, and they announced that they're actually postponing and canceling some drills to minimize the possible spread of the coronavirus, but they stand ready to help. I thought that would be interesting. If you're interested to learn more about Eddie's 6-point plan for the pandemic response. It's posted on the website, more.com, right there with news and issues. You can click on either one of those. You can get all of the updates on this campaign stands for coronavirus. But I believe on the line right now is Samba Kam. She is on our team, elected official. She actually came here when Governor Bob Ray was governor. And she applied for refugee status back then. And I believe Sam's on the line. I'll let you guys take it over.
Hey, thanks, Brent. Again, we got the Emmy Award winner, Brent Roski, that's been helping us on the show today and bringing in Sam Bakam. Sam, are you with us?
I am.
Well, hi, Sam. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Eddie.
I got to ask you, I just had John Niederbach on the call, and we were talking about the census for a minute. Can you talk to me a little bit about the Asian community relative to the census, how important it is?
Yes, the Asian community understands that the census is very important, and I have myself, on behalf of our community, has been talking to people and informed them that, it's something that they have to do and they must do, and it's very important for us to get involved and get ourselves counted with the census. And they pretty much promised me they will send in the information.
Awesome. We need them to do that. This census is arguably one of the most important ones that we're going to have in our lifetimes, because we're seeing what those numbers are going to mean for our communities, especially our communities of color, Sam. So very important that we participate. Now with the global pandemic that might disrupt some of those operations, we need to make sure we encourage our folks to pick up the phone, respond to the mail they get. And it's troubling because some folks for political gain have been sending out census official type forms that kind of mislead people. So we need to encourage all of our communities to look at that mail carefully, to not just discard what would be an official census mailing, because they've gotten a whole plethora of folks from even Mr. Trump has sent some things out, which is really disconcerting for us that he's trying to take advantage of the census and mislead people. But he's been a hoax from the beginning. We'll talk about that a little bit later, the malicious deception that he's led throughout his term so far. But we want to pivot from that for a minute to talk about immigration, if we can, Sam. Talk to us about the immigration community, what you're hearing, if anything. Well, let's talk about, first of all, you and I had mentioned earlier, you guys have shared some information about what's been going on in the Asian community in particular relative to potential deportations and things. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, a lot of time when my community, when we see stuff that is posted on Facebook, or, there's a lot of misconception or misunderstanding. Like the last time we saw something in a bill that a senator had opposed to, I think it was in Wisconsin, where they're wanting to deport back some of the Laotian refugee community that came to this country. And everybody was all upset thinking that because of what President Trump is doing, deporting people back, and they thought that they're automatically going to be one of these people. They didn't understand that, they're trying to do this to criminal people that I guess has done criminal activity, and I had to explain that to them, and that kind of eased some people's mind. But yet, in the back of their mind, even though most of us are U.S. citizen, we are rightfully, became a U.S. citizen, and some of us still have green card. But some of those people that aren't citizens are very, very concerned because they're scared. They're scared that one little wrong move, getting like a speeding ticket or doing little wrong things that might be not abiding by the law, that they may get deported. So there's a lot of anxiety regarding that matter of fact about deporting back to Laos.
And how long, Sam, have people been in the community that are kind of experiencing that fear? How long have they been living here?
Well, I myself has been here since 1975. We came as refugee immigrant under the great leadership of Governor Robert D. Ray. So we've been here over 45 years. Most of us has been over here 40 years. So.
And then there's a significant Asian community in central Iowa, Des Moines in particular, but around the state.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
think the last time when I looked up, we had a conversation and a meeting, and we're probably, the Asians alone here that lives in Des Moines, we're almost over 60,000. That's the last conversation from what I remember at a meeting that I was at.
Right. Great community, and it's been very impactful in creating small businesses. I got a lot of folks that have been impactful in technology and in hospitals and nursing. You're a nurse, correct?
I am. I'm a registered nurse. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So the community's been very in education and teaching and on and on.
Absolutely. From my personal experience, Eddie, and I'm going to toot my own horn here. My son, Brandon McCom, he served in the U.S. Air Force for 8 years. He just recently separated in January of 2019. And then I have a niece that graduated from Indianapolis as a naval officer, and I have a nephew who's going to be graduating this May in Ithaca, New York, as a naval officer. So, when I hear a lot of these rhetoric about Donald Trump picking on immigrants, I want to just scream on the TV and make him hear me that, we are part of constructive citizens. We are contributing. We love this country. This is now our home, and we are going to make the best of it, and we support everything that the U.S. government, has to offer to us. This is the land of opportunity, and I just get so angry at the rhetoric that he does, especially what's going on right now. I don't know why he has to call the COVID-19 Chinese virus. He has no clue what kind of this kind of stuff does to us in our community, what kind of retaliation we get from his calling that the Chinese virus.
Yeah, I know that's very disconcerting, and we called him out on that the other day, and we'll continue to do that. It leads to people making poor decisions because he encourages that. He's done that in the past. He's done that covertly, not only against the Asian community, but against the Jewish community, against the African American community, against the Latino community, against folks of the Islamic faith. It's been very reckless that we've had, and I've been very disappointed, Sam, that Joni Ernst, who I'm running against, has yet to have the courage to stand up and speak up against that hateful undertone that he's had out there. When we have 60,000 Asians in our community, when we have tens of thousands of Latinos in our community, and African Americans, and a Jewish population, and a number of folks that come from various faiths, including the Islamic tradition. So, always been concerning for me. It's one of the reasons that we're running, to bring people together. And we need to do that in a meaningful way, because that diversity does make us stronger, contrary to Steve King's popular belief that he tries to espouse out there. And we want to continue to stand up for all of our communities and do that. And what you said about your relatives that have been serving in the service is something we need to be talking to all Iowans and all Americans, to let them know that our community, all of our communities, all Americans, because there's only a human race, by the way. So everybody that's part of the human race in this country is out there working for our country, in the Navy, in the Air Force, in the Marines, in the National Guard. They're doing good work also in our communities, whether it's been as teachers, nurses, and doctors, and lawyers, and working on union halls, all kinds of work. We're doing this together. We're running to bring people together. Ms. Ernst is going to want to try to divide us. And I'm running to create a synergy of folks that we haven't had in a long time. And I'm glad, Sam, for you being on our team, for you to continue to help me connect with the Asian community. We need to continue to do that. Thank you so much for being on. We're going to move on to some questions if we can. Sam, can I let you go? Anything else you got for me today?
No, okay. I just want to say thank you, Eddie, so much for running, because you are the candidate that Iowans need, because I know you will represent all people regardless of our color, of our sex, of our orientation, whatever. You are the person. So I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to get my community involved. We're going to get you those absentee ballots. Let's go get it done. Thanks, son. You have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Thank you, Eddie. Have a good day. Bye-bye. And just as in, Brent Roski is out there standing by. Hi, Brent.
From a fascinating story there from Ms. Bacom. She is an incredible person, elected official. She is just an amazing Iowan now, and we're so happy to have her on Team Mauro. So thank you, Sam, for calling in. Up in a little while, want to make sure that viewers know Iowa State Representative Ross Wilburn's going to be joining us. Now, Ross won his special election with something like 98% of the vote. He's a former Iowa City mayor. He ran for governor, and he's just one of the best folks you could ever have the good fortune to meet. So we're going to be chatting with Mr. Wilburn here at 4:30. Real quick, wanted to say CNN's reporting FDA authorizes new test could detect coronavirus in about 45 minutes. Which is a fantastic, obviously, some good news coming out of all this. Authorization was made Friday. Tests will begin next week, according to the California-based company. So, hoping that holds up. That's CNN reporting that. Sadly, the death toll out of Italy today, 24 hours, they passed 700 deaths. Sadly, a grim record, 700 people dead in Italy over the last 24 hours. Real quick, I believe, I can see Scott right now. I believe we've got campaign manager Mark Langen is going to join us real quick. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you guys doing? Well, it's great how many people we've had participate in the live chat and what our field team has been able to accomplish making calls from home. It's really been pretty amazing to watch how, all these different people have come all together to support Eddie and to work on the campaign from all kinds of different corners of this country and the state, and their willingness to adapt and kind of change up their routine to get this done. It's been pretty phenomenal. And shout out to Scott and Brent and Brian and everybody else behind the scenes who've been helping make these live streams do well. And number 1, 2, and 3, as far as priorities for us, is our team. And it's something that big about why I ended up working with Eddie and supported the campaign from the get-go. But also what we've tried to do here is that, like, ultimately, the way we treat our staff is how we, want to kind of live our values as a campaign. So it was, I didn't hesitate to send folks home and to cancel events to make sure that we're taking care of all of them. That's incredibly helpful to us. In terms of like some of the other big decisions we've had to make, really trying to make the decision to pivot. Like typically, you get out on the trail and you're talking to voters and doing events. I mean, Iowans had a lot of experience during the caucuses here, getting to meet face to face with all their candidates for president. And, with the weather getting good, we were really excited to get out and about. And so these live streams and town halls that we're doing are going to be front and center for how we talk to voters for the next, 60 plus days. Eddie is going to be doing a number of town halls in the evening. So 2 to 3 times a week, we're going to be doing larger events that'll be an hour to an hour and a half long. That'll be the equivalent of what we would have been doing publicly in events out there in the communities. And so those will be this next week. On Tuesday night, we're going to be talking about immigration reform and policy and human rights. On Friday, we're going to be doing a multi-county virtual town hall on Friday evening. Both of those will be at 7 o'clock. And then every day during the week, Eddie will be going, we're calling it In the Cage with Eddie Mauro, him being an old baseball coach and a baseball fan. Those will be every day at 4 o'clock with Eddie kind of giving an update on what's going on in the campaign that day, reacting to the news of the day and that sort of thing.
We just want to remind you that we're on the Eddie Mauro for Tomorrow television show today, doing an update. As Brent has mentioned a number of times, 3 hours of conversations with you. We're here to answer questions as well. So if you have some questions you want to fire away, we can talk about them. I think we still have coming up just one more guest for the day. I'm not sure if Ross is still coming on or not. I think that was the initial plan, that we have potentially State Representative Ross Wilburn joining on today. I'm getting some text messages from my family while we've been on here. They probably don't know that I'm doing this show presently, so we can see what they got happening on the street. Brent's mentioned a few things that are happening in real time out there. Brent, you still with us? I just want to make sure you're still there. So
there we go. Can you see me? Folks, we're just going to take a moment right now, and we're going to thank a guy named Scott Harrington who is sitting there. He is just in real time has put this together. I don't know if you folks have any idea how complicated it is to get 10 guests, cameras, and all set up. And by the way, the space that they are in right now did not exist to our campaign 2 days ago. So Brian and Scott have been putting in, I don't know, 20-hour days. So Scott and Brian are doing amazing work. So thank you to them. And I got a text just a little bit ago. Someone said, "Boy, this looks so professional and great and seamless." And I said, "Well, it's really thanks to those guys, because honestly, when we started at 2:00, we were still working out some stuff." So thank you, Brian and Scott. You're doing a heck of a great job. I wanted to. We are going to have State Rep Ross Wilburn with us in just a couple minutes. We're gonna share some news here. CNN just reported this, and this is some big numbers, folks. CNN reporting Governor Andrew Cuomo said during a news conference Saturday that New York is sending 1 million, yes, that's right, 1 million of the N95 respirator masks to New York City, as the confirmed cases across the state in New York have surpassed 10,000. His quote is saying 1 million masks won't get us through the crisis, but it will make a significant contribution. 10,000 confirmed cases across New York, and 54% of those in New York cases are between 18 and 49 years old. And I want to just throw out one other little statistic here that we're talking about. And it's something that I don't, it's one of these things, right? When you look at the data of the different numbers that have been coming in, you've got Italy right now. Their death toll has risen by 793. I mentioned that a little bit ago. That's a 24-hour, in a 24-hour term here, over 700 dead. But over in Russia, they were looking at. So now that they're not through it, let's not jump to China's all finished with this. But they are on what you could be calling seeing the light at the end of the tunnel if they manage their recovery correctly. And they're going through and they're saying a lot of the folks who get it are making it through. They've really made a nice little breakdown of statistics, men and women, and how they're reacting differently, etc. But I've got Brian here saying, let's go to some questions. So do you folks have Scott, Brian, you want to take those over there in the studio?
They got them. So we heard from Brenda Johnston. She mentioned that when she attended Graceland University, they went to a lot of Royals games because they were so cheap. Maybe they spent more money in Kansas City, they have a better team. I think that's a shot at Mark Langen. The question, though, do you think the numbers of COVID cases are accurate since we have low numbers of tests? So the answer to that is no, the number of COVID cases are not accurate because we don't have enough tests. And it's one of the reasons why California and New York has given up, because it's not helping them any further to test to get that data. It would be helpful to have that data because there will be people that are going to have COVID that we're not testing, aren't going into our data systems. The CDC won't have, that'll help us measure this event fully. And that data is very helpful for future planning. So it'll be helpful for us to do more testing. It's just not the priority right now. And again, I worry about even a state like us where we don't feel like we have a lot of folks that are known to have COVID, but they're experiencing symptoms or a carrier right now, and we want to be very mindful of that. Jasmine from Des Moines asked, I have a pre-existing condition and have to stay home and can't work due to coronavirus. I'm extra concerned about what happens if the ACA gets gutted. Do you support the ACA, the protections for those with pre-existing conditions? And absolutely. I've been out running in this race so far because Joni Ernst 5 times voted to take away that health care. 5 times she voted to take away the ACA. And that wouldn't be horrible on its surface if they had a plan then to take care of people beyond that. And still today, I think we're almost 10 years later, there still is no plan. And you have the hoaxer in chief, Mr. Trump, tell us that he had some kind of plan and they'll announce it after the next election. He won't be president then, so it won't make a difference. But it's a shame that if they have a plan that they're not announcing it, didn't announce it 2 or 3 or 4 years ago when he became president. He should already had a plan then when he became president. He has no business being in that office if he didn't have a plan when he took over after telling everybody how horrible the ACA was. So I'm very concerned with people with pre-existing conditions, not only related to COVID, but other conditions. I'm very worried about healthcare in general as one of the top concerns and pressures that people had as we've been running around the state to our 90 plus counties that we did visit, to people we had talked to about both physical and mental health and the pre-existing conditions. We need to make sure that we have the right type of center that's going to make sure that every American has health care. I'm interested in health care for every American. And we're going to figure out a way to make that happen. We want to figure out a way that we can make that happen to the benefit of especially hardworking Americans and those that are struggling at the bottom from the ground up. And Ms. Ernst to date still doesn't have a plan that's going to help those with pre-existing conditions, that's going to help bring down premiums and costs of health care and deductibles and drug pricing. There still is no plan out there, a lot of empty rhetoric that we've heard from her because she's part of the hoaxing that's been going on from that side of the aisle for almost 5 years of her administration. What else we got? What other questions do we got? I got Reed from Ames. How do you feel like your faith message can bring conservatives over from Joni Ernst? Good question. As I mentioned early on, in my public service, in my community service and outreach, I've always had a faith bent to that. Kind of got a Catholic Jesuit background. We talk about social justice and economic justice, environmental justice, and justice in particular. And because of that, I've been out there walking alongside with people for a long time. Whether it's been in our homeless community, whether it's been touching and impacting domestic violence survivors, human trafficking survivors, folks dealing with mental health issues, addiction issues, fighting for workers' rights and farmers' rights and women's rights. Those are things that I've been doing for a very long time. And a lot of that comes from my faith, because our faith taught us to step up and speak out for folks. And that's what some of our faith leaders did, to the point that they lost their lives for those efforts. And we need now leaders today to go take that message out into our communities and talk about the real moral dilemmas that are in front of us. How do we take care of all of our neighbors, especially our neighbors in our rural communities where some of those folks are voting right that are coming out of faith communities. That I think are voting against their own best interest and voting against, I think, the interest of what their faith values are really telling them about how do we have policies that uplift everybody, not just a few. How do we have policies where we treat the morality of life much greater than just the giving of birth? And we do that by how we shape our economy, how we shape our education system, how we shape our criminal justice system, how we tackle the environmental challenges that are in front of us. All those are important to us, and those are all strong faith values that we need to go out and talk about. And I think with that kind of message, that we touch enough folks that are moderate Republican, moderate independent, and talk about how my faith values are good American values, good Iowa values, the values that I think Joni Ernst has walked away from because she hasn't been reaching out for those struggling people. Her faith has been on the golden calf. Her faith has been about special interest and big industry and fat cats like the Koch brothers. I'm here to talk about the golden rule again. How do we treat our brothers and sisters the same way we want to be treated? That's very, very important. So thanks for asking that question. What else we got going on? Any other questions you got for me? Karen in North Liberty. We're seeing different local leaders deal with the COVID-19 different ways. Why isn't our governor acting more? Why isn't our governor acting more precautiously? Is that the right word? I'm not sure. I don't think she's acting boldly enough, I guess, will be my initial response to that. We want to make sure that we're acting boldly. And I'm not sure what's holding her back. Again, I think she should be calling out the National Guard in full force. We should be asking across this state, not just in the city of Des Moines, but everybody across this state, in Dayton and Carroll and Keokuk to Shenandoah to Sioux Center to Decorah to Marquette. We should be telling everybody that they should be staying home except for essential purposes, and we need to do that right away. Very important that we take those steps. We got to make sure that we're speaking out every day. And I guess I'm not in the trenches with her, but I'm hoping every day that she's out trying to find out how do we find the personal protection equipment that the folks on the front lines need to go fight this battle. Again, we heard in a presser today from the national government that things are coming. They're coming soon. We don't know a day. There's a lot of them coming. We don't know how many. And people need better answers than that. When I order products as a small business owner, I know how much they cost, what day they're scheduled to be delivered, and how many of them are coming. I know it's on back order. And those are the kind of things that we should be answering. I think they're fair questions that we keep asking. I'm hoping, I guess I take that back, that's been how most of the answers have been coming from this administration from the outset on every issue. So to have us still be non-specific on answering questions today on something that's as important as this crisis is dumbfounding for us, but it's par for the course. It's one of the reasons, again, why leadership, I think, is on the ballot in November. We need somebody who's going to stand up with forcefulness, with integrity, tell us bad news if we need to tell us bad news. We're all big boys and girls. We can take bad news if we need to hear it and adjust accordingly. That hasn't been happening. People have been asking us questions about Governor Reynolds and Joni Ernst. And speaking of, Joni Ernst, I want to continue to remind people she's voted twice against paid family leave. And she did that in a couple of mentions. And we got a petition out there. I'd love you to go to our website, more.Paid. If you would, please, there's a petition out there. Go on and click on the petition, sign your petition. That we're out there pressing back, saying we want to make sure that every Iowan has paid family leave. We're also posting it live in the feed, so take a minute and sign that petition there within our feed. Very important for us. Want to talk about also tomorrow on our program, 2 o'clock, World Water Day virtual event taking place. Christine Curry on our team has put together quite the panel of people that want to talk about conservation, and we're also going to be asking some questions about COVID-19 relative to that. So there'll be some common conversations how we tie all those things together. Extremely important. Over from Iowa City, we're hearing from Jeffrey. Thanks for reaching out. Jeffrey wants to know how you plan to run this campaign if they delay the primary. We need to brighten and type faster. It's better when he was asking the questions. I'm not sure who his typing teacher was. Brenda, will you please help him out overnight to increase the typing speed that's going on? So we're not sure what's going to happen if they delay it. Right now, we're playing the game is June 2nd is going to be our day, and all eyes for us are on June 2nd. We'll adjust accordingly if there happens to be some kind of a change in the plans with the campaign. But right now, all of us are geared up for June 2nd. John Niederbach mentioned there's 5 candidates in the primary. There are 5 candidates in the primary. And I continue to mention the other 4 candidates are really good people. They really are. But there's a stark difference in this primary. There's a stark difference in overall leadership. There's a stark difference in a person that has been walking alongside of folks for decades now in the shoes of the people that are most impacted today with this crisis, and could be impacted again in another day with the crisis. And you want to have somebody that's been walking alongside you, been your partner for a very long time. And you're looking at that candidate. You've been looking for a bit while you've been on the site, or if you're seeing this in delay concept. I want to say that we want to have a candidate who wants to talk about a new era in politics, and that's what we're talking about here. And if you go and listen to some pundits, they say there's kind of a favorite out there today, but in that favorite, again, nice person, probably vote the way we would want everybody to vote, but we need and deserve something even better than that. We need somebody who's going to push back against the status quo. It's going to talk about a new era, about how we make sure that everybody has health care today, and that's not going and just following in line with the current folks in D.C. and the establishment. We better go talk about who's going to bring a new playbook, who's going to run a new play to help us score those points and make sure everybody has health care, who's going to help us move the ball forward on climate and environment, who's going to help us move the ball forward on resurrecting labor unions. I can tell you, the person that's got the consensus favor right now has a heartfelt story about labor unions, about how they helped, but the record doesn't reflect that in the life's work sense. And I think we better look at people's life's work, not just the stories that they've had that makes them want to reach out to folks, but what have they done to really lift people up in all of their efforts throughout their life. And my life work stands far above everybody else's out there. I'm Ron Burgundy. I'm going to have a mustache tomorrow, and I'm going to try to get that accent going on. But right now, we're going to go back to Brent for a quick second. Brent, turn it over to you, brother.
Hey guys, yeah, we're just about to bring on someone we're very excited about, State Rep Ross Wilburn. I just wanted to pass along some interesting thoughts here. A Democratic congressman is actually down with the coronavirus. He's saying he feels short of breath, has a fever of 102. It is Utah Rep Ben Adams. He's a Democratic congressman out there. He's one of two members of the House who've actually been diagnosed. Basically, they're saying you can take Tylenol, and that days 7 and 8 are the worst, and he is in day 7 right now. So I think that's really interesting. Best of luck to Congressman McAdams out there. That's on CNN if you want to read more about that. They're suggesting Tylenol and not ibuprofen, folks. That is from the France head Ministry of Health. And one other quick little tidbit here. Can I still catch the coronavirus if I received a flu shot this year? I just want to throw some news pieces out there. The fact is, yes, you sure can. Seasonal flu shots are important to protect yourself from the flu, but are not effective against the coronavirus. Just wanted to throw some tidbits of knowledge out there. I believe we have on the line a gentleman who was elected this term in a special election to the Iowa House. He's former Iowa City Mayor, former gubernatorial candidate, and now state representative Ross Wilburn. Scott, do we have Ross there on the line? All right, folks, take it away.
Thank you, Brent. Thanks for doing a great job with us on the show today. We continue to figure this out on the fly. Representative Wilburn, do we have you on today?
I am here. How are you, Eddie?
Good, Ross. Good. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet.
First of all, congratulations. You and I first got together when you were running for governor, former mayor of Iowa City. I think your job brought you into Ames. A special election opened up a door for you, and we need to have people with seats at the table, such as yourself, that are out advocating for folks from various communities. So congratulations on your position, and thanks for stepping up and speaking up for Iowans.
Well, thank you. And I first of all, I just want to, folks on the line here, I just want to thank folks in Ames for giving me the opportunity to represent them and the interest of Iowans. And it's been a pleasure, challenging at times, but we're trying to make sure that we're doing what we can for families, for workers, for the environment, and a whole sort of other important causes that are out there. But you gave a good summary of my background and who I am, so I don't know if you want me to hit you with a question right now, or... I'm
going to ask you one first, so we'll go back and forth. So first of all, be my question. So obviously, you're in the state legislature. We've had this COVID situation that's out there. They've shut down the Capitol building, but what do you believe our state is doing well right now from your vantage point, and where are we falling short in responding to this crisis?
Well, we did shut the Capitol down, but several of us are trying to do what we can to help get out accurate information. And I think one thing that is going well is that people in general are trying to pull together and get information out. You mentioned my gubernatorial effort, and our campaign theme was Let's Beat Iowa, and I see all sorts of Iowans trying to put up accurate information, and then just how can we help? People are looking and desperate to find out how they can help someone who is either currently sick or someone that might be in one of the higher risk categories. Anyone can get the coronavirus, and anyone can have a severe reaction and even die from that. But I think Iowans are trying to pull together. Well, there's still some denial out there about that. And anytime that, whether it's public health or some type of prevention effort, if you're doing it well, then people may wonder why it doesn't seem like things are so bad. You didn't get the number of cases that we thought in a particular area, but the more we can do to try and stay ahead of it by people washing their hands and trying to keep distance from their friends, neighbors, and family, I think that's going well. I think another thing that's going well is just having those gubernatorial, Facebook and YouTube, press conferences. I think there'll be another one at 2:30 tomorrow, Sunday, and then if the governor looks like she's going to continue doing those at regular intervals, I think that's important. Even if the update is no update, it's important for people to be able to have an expectation of a particular time, day, that they know that they're going to get some information right from the source.
Right.
Also, several representatives putting out information. There's going to be plenty of time, and there will be time when we get beyond the immediate crisis of this, where critique is going to happen in terms of how prepared we were, how prepared the country was, how prepared in Iowa we were. Certainly part of our oversight responsibility when we get back together on the 15th of April in the legislature, we will be having some of those conversations.
Hope you get back on the 15th of April. I got to ask, because you got a lot of friends in Johnson County, and obviously that's where you spent a lot of your time before moving to Ames recently. What are you hearing? Because that community got hit pretty hard initially in Iowa. What are you hearing from there? If anything, any friends impacted?
Well, I've had several friends that work at university hospitals or are private practitioners, physicians, nurses, and just concerned about some of the equipment that they're concerned about being overwhelmed with. I think that's something that I've been hearing, getting a lot of message from some of my friends who are at university hospitals and clinic. I think another thing that I've heard is just the importance that people there and across the state are recognizing, the child care workers, the people that are working for the cities and counties, the letter carriers, the folks that are working at the grocery stores, the risk that they are taking by continuing to show up and work. I think, we need to be mindful of that and looking at the importance of having a livable wage for folks and being able to have paid sick leave. I think those are things to remind ourselves of. But otherwise, I did see today that here in Story County, we've got our first confirmed case of the COVID-19 virus from a test. So and today, I think the highest number of cases have come out, an additional 23 today, right, which is a total of 68 positive cases. So, we're clearly not done with this, and the more that, again, this information comes out, we'll just remind folks that we've got to do things to try and help reduce the rate of contraction, yeah.
Yep, no doubt about it. Have you heard from Senator Ernst or Senator Grassley in any kind of coordinated effort here?
No, I'm not on their call list.
Yeah.
But, in the Democratic caucus in the Iowa House, we are making sure we get daily updates. We are collecting information when we hear of gaps that people are pointing out to make sure that our staff is communicating with the governor's department heads and legislative liaisons, so that, in some cases, as you hear these continued rollouts from declarations, different disaster declarations coming from the governor, some of those reflect some things that her staff has brought to their attention, and some of it through efforts of folks in the legislature making sure. So it's important that we continue to hear where those gaps are so we can pass those on and hopefully influence future declarations.
Right, and we're continuing to, from my vantage point as just a candidate and a community organizer and advocate, we're out advocating the governor to take bold action, to stay out in front of this, and asking people that are listening to us to continue to do the same. So we'll continue to make those outreaches. I'm tipping my hat to a lot of governors in a lot of our states that have done bold things, and Governor Reynolds is doing some good things. So I give her some kudos for that. I think there's some areas where we can beef up and be even more forward-thinking and proactive. And I want to continue to advocate and press her to make sure we're out in front of this game and not getting caught from behind.
Right. Well, two quick things if I could bring up. I mean, this is just one example of with some further input, a change in action that with the initial proclamations that came out, several businesses were concerned about support that they might give, and they had heard that the Small Business Association would have some type of grants available. Well, Iowa wasn't signed up and listed as an eligible state, and so she finally got that the materials into the Small Business Association at the national level in D.C. and then that Iowa should be. I haven't looked at the webpage today, but it should be listed on the SBA's webpage now that Iowa's an eligible state, and that's just one example. Another example is something I still haven't had clarification on this. If you, in terms of unemployment, it was listed as you are impacted or if you're having to take unemployment, that the waiver, there's a waiver for a job search, but I've not heard if you've been on unemployment and you're rolling off, so you haven't been directly affected by that, is the maximum benefit, is that going to be waived? Because if you've been on unemployment and it's going to be trouble to get an interview when people aren't, when some of the businesses are closing down, and so I haven't heard a final resolution on whether that maximum benefit has been extended.
Right. No, and there's some questions to be asked about eligibility even, and I know that they're expanding folks and trying to expedite people coming through, but we need to talk about the eligibility. I got to jump back to the loan piece that you talked about, because I've heard a couple of times, we talked to Doug Burns from Carrol today, and Brent Roski on our team announced as well about the SBA providing loans. And as a small business owner that has a business that touches thousands of small business owners, I don't think loans are what we need right now. We need actual grants. If we're going to bail out the airline industry to the tune of $40 billion, I want to say, I can't remember if that's the right number. We shouldn't be asking small businesses to borrow money when they can't even service that debt right now to get back on their feet. So I would encourage you and other legislators to press the governor on that. I'm not sure that the loans are the answer at this point in time anyway. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. It's a combination of factors, whether it's loan, forgivable loan, some type of grant. I think we need to continue to press for those small businesses, the backbone of both the country and here in Iowa. And it's important that whether someone's running a business out of their on their own, or if they're a small employer, 10 people or less, it's critical that as the wave of the virus makes its way through, that people are able to get back to work and make a living and make a livable wage. So we'll certainly continue to press that. And as I said, we suspended the legislature until the 15th, but many of us are committed to try and do constituency work. We're keeping a list of things that we want to make sure that we bring up on the 15th when we get back together.
Awesome. So we've been having these conversations today. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them so far. You're the last one of the day, and it's been back and forth. So I got a chance to ask you a few questions. Thanks for asking. What question you got for me?
I'm sure you've on your webpage you've got some of your background and some of the interviews you've done, and probably some of it's come up on the Facebook Live feed here. But given your background, if successful, becoming our U.S. Senator, which committees do you think would be of interest to you, or would your background lend itself to in D.C.? Which committees do you think?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And a handful. So I think the Agriculture Committee would be a good one for me. We could go talk about, and we had Seth Watkins on earlier today, because we need to talk about a new era in agriculture today. How do we capitalize on the great assets we have with our farmers to move in a new direction, to work on regenerative agriculture, on carbon sequestration, on cap and trade issues that would drive money in there. Obviously, our SNAP programs there. We're going to talk about some climate and environment issues there. There's so much going on within the agricultural committee that would make me impactful there. I talk about finance because of my small business background. and we employ people across the country. I've been in the highs and lows of that. We touch billions of dollars worth of property aggregate across the country. Know a lot about how the insurance industry needs to work both in a crisis like this, but also when it comes to healthcare, which may be impactful there. I think as a strategist, as being a coach, would make me instrumental working on foreign affairs. So there's a lot of places where I think I would be good. And I tell a lot of people, Russ, that the education folks are woefully behind and been diminished for a long time. It wouldn't hurt to have some folks talking about education in a meaningful way and make those committees stronger again, to have some because our public education has fallen way behind. So it's not too many places where I don't think I have some talents and skills where I'd be impactful. I would say I would go where folks think that I need to be best suited, and looking forward to the opportunity to be there. What else you got? Anything else you got for me?
I do. This is kind of a comment. If I could just hear you kind of comment on a lot of times when things get funded, especially from the federal level, it depends on what a lot of people call the flavor of the month in terms of the issue that is present and is on people's mind. But I like to think about the interconnectedness between some issues, and so kind of I don't know if you call it a triad or a quad area. Childcare, housing, transportation, and jobs. At the city and state level, you hear people talking about, well, we need jobs. And if they're not going to pay a livable wage, or if they're just close over a livable wage, if you're someone who's got children, you need to be able to have accessible and affordable child care. And if you can't live in the city, the further you have to live out, whether you can afford to live in the city or not. And if not, then how are you going to get there? And any money that you have that's going to be used for to get there just eats out of whatever your wage is. So could you just comment, do you see that connectedness between child care, housing, transportation?
Absolutely, and I think it's even broader than that. What we need to talk about, you mentioned jobs, you mentioned education, you mentioned housing, we talked about daycare. I think we got to talk about mental health and physical health as well. All those are interconnected, and then we can talk about how that reaches out into our faith and family values that would reduce divorce, that would reduce domestic violence, that would reduce addiction. There's so many interconnected tissues there, and it's not just one thing, so you're absolutely right. We need to put together comprehensive plans, and here's a chance, Ross, for us to do that right now with a really meaningful response from the federal level, and we're going to need one from the state level as well to address the COVID crisis, not only on the mental and physical health and welfare of folks, but the economic health and welfare of folks. When it does come to all those things, how do we provide a fair and just economy? How do we make sure that we have a fair and just education system? How do we have a daycare system for people to get meaningful jobs and to grow and reach the promises that you and I have been able to reach ourselves, those behind? And we need to go back to daycare, talk about how do we pay daycare workers so we have sustainable daycares, especially in rural communities where it's hard to pay and keep daycare workers to have a functioning daycare. And then how do we provide the affordable housing mechanism for folks? And there's going to have to be a lot of outreach and lifting from the ground up. And what I've seen for too long, and here's an opportunity for us to do that, we've seen too much of this coming from the top down, and it's not getting to the vulnerable people. I'm hoping you would agree. It's not getting to the most vulnerable people in our communities, and they're being stuck and left behind. And we saw that in 2008 and 9 with the bailout responses there, where we took care of big banks and big industries because they were too big to fail. But we didn't take care of small business owners in a meaningful way. We didn't take care of people vulnerable and that lost their homes, lost their jobs, lost all of their savings, and have been struggling ever since. And the gulf between the haves and have-nots has grown exponentially. And until we have a real moral response to that, that gulf will continue to be there. And that's one of the reasons we're running, man, because we need to have the right kind of leader that wants to pull all those pieces together to help people in a meaningful way. And again, we need to do it at the state and federal level. One of the reasons I'm running for the United States Senate is I want to come work with you. I want to come work with the legislature, and how do we shape some of that at the state level? What do I need to take from from you and the others back to DC and advocate for to build the right kind of policy and rules and resources to get back to the state of Iowa. And if we have that kind of common work together, our rural and urban communities, the suburban communities, black, white, and brown, and all the others, our farmers and our small business owners and our bigger business owners, we could do something really meaningful. This can be the next great generation that we've been waiting for, that we fulfill the promises that we've all made to our kids and our grandkids.
Very good. And just one final question, then I'll have to get going. I guess a comment and a question. I was glad to hear you mention mental health care, and I was also glad to hear you talk in general about healthcare and some of the equipment that is in short supply. I mean, even with equipment, I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think that there are enough respiratory therapists to operate some of the equipment. And we're talking about mental health care. We don't have enough psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, counselors to fill some of those. So what at the federal level do you foresee areas that would be a strength of yours in trying to impact in providing, meeting those gaps in service areas?
So a handful of things. In the midst of this crisis here, we better go tap into all the resources that we have, which can be some of our retired folks, maybe to pull them back out for a bit, to step in, to go to our health education institutions, so that'd be the University of Iowa, Des Moines U here in town. There might be resources of students that are in various levels of training at Iowa State University and all of our colleges, who is in their second or third year of some kind of practice that can go out and help in some level in the midst of this crisis. And then beyond that, Russ, the important part is, how do we go out and encourage people to get into these industries so that in these professions, and we got to do that by providing grants and aid and real mechanisms for people to go to school. That's when we talk about debt forgiveness for student loans, or people that are going to go into mental health professions or other social service professions, or are going to go work in rural communities, the places where we have big gulfs right now. I think those are some of the things we need to talk about, both at the state and federal level, of how we encourage that. Again, if you listen to what we have going on, we're talking about a new frontier, man. We're talking about a new frontier of programs. We're talking about how do we bring our young people together to talk about a new healthcare or health corps, just similar to the Peace Corps, getting young people into our rural communities. And that was a great recommendation that came from, I gotta be honest, with a teacher up in Decorah the other day up at Luther College. That, hey, Eddie, let's talk about how do we bring young people together and get them out on the streets as well, working in our nursing homes, working in our rural hospitals and mental health facilities, maybe even going out and visiting shut-ins and folks that are being left behind. We don't have the resources to do that. So it's a great question. There's a lot of challenges, as you know, out there, and you and I have talked about this before, and I've heard you eloquently talk about this. We can rise to the challenges. We have to have the right leadership, and we have one in you. So thank you for stepping up for us there. I'd love to have you back on. We're going to run out of time, so I'm going to let you go for right now. So thanks for being on today, Ross. We'll catch you another time. Thank you very much.
All right, sounds good. All right, stay healthy.
Thank you too. So I'm so grateful that we had all these folks on today. We've reached about 197,000 people here in the past few weeks, and all of our digital outreach and work that we're doing on Facebook and other sources. We'll continue to reach out using virtual town halls to keep Iowans informed about our local, our state, our national news about our campaign. It's been a great 3 hours. It's been 3 hours already. I haven't had to go to the bathroom yet. So I think we should go another 3. Anybody another 3? No, they're all saying no. We're all cutting it off in a couple more minutes. Let's take it back to Brent, though, for a quick second. We can recap here in a second. Brent, back to you, brother.
Hey, boy, what a great day. Literally yesterday when they said we're going to go live for 3 hours, I was like, well, let's do it. And boy, kudos to our guy, Eddie Mauro. You've done a fantastic job today. But I want to thank, first and foremost, our guest today, Kendra Breitsprecher with the Dayton Leader, Doug Burns with the Carrol Times-Herald, Seth Watkins, organic farmer, John Niederbach with the Census, Samba Kam, she's on our team, and of course, Iowa State Rep Ross Wilburn. Events like this, virtual town halls, they only work with the other folks involved. So thank you to everyone for being on. We got about 3 minutes before we're going to wrap up. So I figure I got a couple questions for you here, Eddie. We're gonna bring it back to campaign land. We're going to talk about. We want to let people know how they can donate, how they can volunteer, and then I thought we'd end it off with you giving folks a little background about your history of helping. So donate, volunteer, and what you've been doing with Amos, etc.
So thanks for that, Brent. So eddiemorrow.com, go check us out. We're getting new people every day that are jumping on. They like what they're hearing here. They love our energy. They really like our team that's been reaching out and engaging with them through various mediums. So, and thank you for answering your phone. Thank you for responding to them on email and other ways. We're putting together some hangouts and things like that to continue to meet with folks just like we would in a normal small town hall. So go find our website, email us if you'd like to join our team at info@eddiemorrow.com, EDDIEMAURO, I think it's right behind me. You can always hit the donate button. We're out trying to raise $5, $10, $15, $25 from folks out there, and it's a very tough world we're in right now, so that's not easy to do, so hit the donate button. Please also consider all the other folks that need some help. So Brent's other question is to talk about what we got going on from an Amos standpoint in organizing and community service, all things we've been doing. That's just been part of my background. It's something that I've been doing since I was a teenager. I've always been interested in helping people, especially people that are being left behind, people that have been treated unjustly. I always thought that I would have been a great person to have around in the tumultuous 60s out there fighting. I think I would have been on one of those freedom buses going down to Montgomery. I would have loved to have been walking across that bridge with the folks that stood up and stepped up and spoke up for us in those days to build a better world and a better America. And I continue to want to do that. And part of that is, even during this crisis we have in front of us, is to step up and lead. And part of that leadership has been we're out there pinging Governor Reynolds to continue to challenge her to be bold. And we want to continue to do that. And I want to continue to go out and service people the best I can. I think tomorrow at noon, we're going to have the bus out. Brent doesn't even know this yet. Sorry, Brent, can you hear us? We're going to be out with the bus. We're going to help create visions for a little bit tomorrow to deliver some meals tomorrow at noon before our 2 o'clock town hall on water conservation with Christine. But we need to continue to make that outreach. It's just who I am. And that's the kind of life and energy that I want to bring to the United States Senate. I know we've been here 3 hours, and I can go another 10. I just have a different gear that I've been able to run that goes nonstop. One day the good Lord will grab it from me and tell me you've had enough. But until that happens, I want to go fight out for you every single day. So go join us, go donate, be ready to go vote for us. And then also, as part of our community service, I want to continue to advocate for Des Moines Area Religious Council. I have a food bank and other places out there. If you're here out in rural communities, talk to your rural communities about who you can be helping out there. Remember, your donation probably goes a lot further than going to the store and buying bags of groceries and things like that. I want to thank everybody again for joining us for our virtual Q&A on the Moral for Tomorrow Network. We'll continue to be back tomorrow live at 2 p.m. to celebrate World Water Day and discussing clean water and climate action with a panel of specialists. Looking forward to having that. Please go take care of your own mental health, your own mental well-being. Go out for a walk. Go out and enjoy some sunshine. And you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Taking it back to stay home and stay healthy. Have a wonderful day.
And we're going to let Eddie get the last word here. I just wanted to say on my list of guests here, Minister Rob Johnson actually started our live stream today with a prayer and had some excellent comments at the top of our hour. I wanted to say thank you to him. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in. Again, eddiemorrow.com. Sign up to learn more. And for final sign off, here's our guy, Eddie.
Thank you again, everybody. Thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Stay safe. Keep reaching out to your friends and loved ones to make sure they're doing well. You take care.